Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ark Podcast, episode 15. And boy, do we have a crazy set of stories to get through in this particular session. We've got Anthony Albanese resurrecting the voice bill from April, where he wants to take control of the world's internet, vaccinate the world's internet. We take a closer look at the aftermath of the Trump versus Kamala Harris presidential debate and its potential impact on the swing states. Australia's population cracks 27.1 million people. Albanese claims to have halved inflation. Is that actually true, or is it misinformation? How did the ABC manipulate their story against Heston Russell by adding additional bullet sounds to their story? The CBA digital asset chief claims that more political will is needed to get crypto off the ground. Greg Sheridan throws shade at the current state of the Quad and AUKUS defence agreements. And finally, we take a closer look at the fundamentals of where Australia's economy is at, and is it truly cooked, to be frank. In order to help me meander through these topics, I've got some phenomenal guests. Just like last week, we've got Shakeel Latimer. He's the president of the Pacific Rim Chamber of Commerce. And we've also got Stephen Petith, a veteran from the Navy, owns multiple companies and works as an advisor, investor, and oceaneer. And gentlemen, boy, has it been an insane week. We've had the misinformation bill come up, which is threatening the life of this particular podcast. And we've had an amazing situation where Anthony Albanese has basically been trying to control the world's internet. Now, before I go any further, if you want to support the podcast, if you want to help us keep the lights on, please scan the QR code here. We've got the... if you want to donate to support what we're doing, if you want to support what we're doing here, give it a share, flick us a few bucks, a cup of coffee a month really helps. But without further ado, I'm very excited to get into these stories because, as I've said before, it's not an exaggeration to say that the misinformation bill is insane and it is coming. We have been warning about this for a couple of years now. So the idea of this particular bill was covered really well from a Crikey article. The Crikey article was written by a man called Chris Berg, who surprisingly wrote quite well for Crikey. Crikey's done a few hit pieces on me and some of your favourite people like George Christensen in the past. And this is the title of it. Albo's reckless and draconian misinformation legislation completely undermines itself. I was really shocked by this particular article because it makes the point as to the motive behind this bill. What is this bill going to do? It's essentially going to censor people online. It's going to censor the non-establishment media sources, the non-corporate media sources that aren't a part of the mainstream. So that includes the Light Australian newspaper, that includes podcasts like this. It includes the work that we do under Turning Point Australia for elections. Crikey describes this reaction from the government as the government being incensed by misinformation since it lost the Voice referendum, convinced that its opponents were being misleading. And they also make the point that the government is trying to launder the radicalism of this legislation through the complexities of delegation and regulatory outsourcing, giving the bureaucrats the power to actually get across this. Stephen, welcome to the show. What was your reaction? You've been tracking this for a while. I mean, anyone that has any interest in, and they're outside the establishment, has been tracking this misinformation bill. What are your thoughts on what we're seeing transpire with this?
Oh, it's an absolute, just a lot of bullshit. Pretty much whenever anyone in society now says something, it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong, the government is going to say, no, you're wrong. You know, I could go out, and I think we had this conversation before the show, that I could go out and say, the sky is blue. It's a beautiful day out there. But no, if the government wants to, it says, no, it's not. It's purple, and it's a shit day, right? And because you've said that, they can do it. It's a propaganda unit. That's what Albo is creating here. And look, by the way, people, the Liberals support this as well, right? So both the majors support the propaganda unit that this will create. And this is an absolute Orwellian thing. I always thought when I read that book, 1984, that it was a bit of fiction and it was something that would never happen. And I look outside the door now and all I see is everything in that book is coming true. It's mate, I don't recognise the Western cultures anymore. And I say the entire Western world. whatever we used to say about Russia and China and North Korea and Venezuela and Cuba and all these places, it's now true in our own backyard. And we've got to stop somehow, get together and stop this. Because the people out there, we've been saying it, a lot of us that are outside the establishment now, and who used to be inside the establishment, are all saying the same thing. You know, they've gone too far. They don't care about the people. Right? All they care about is making sure that they retain power and stay in power. And that's what all this is about. There's nothing more than making sure Albo and all his cronies can stay in power.
Yeah. Shakeel, what were your initial thoughts before we get into some of the details of the bill?
You know, I'm really quite tired of this. We've already said very clearly we don't want it. The UK is trying to do the same thing with Keir Starmer. The US tried to do it through Homeland Security. We don't want this. Now, when Senator Conroy was around and he had the metadata rules, nobody in Australia wanted that, and they passed it anyway. So do me a favour, government, all sides. If you're going to carry on like this, can you at least be honest that we don't actually have a representative democracy? Because you're not representing us at all. Australians are clearly saying, if this was a referendum on do we want government to do this, I think that you would have, maybe not Canberra, like The Voice, but you'd have universal support across this country. I reckon you'd have 85% of people that would say absolutely not. So, you know, I'm really tired of parties getting into government and then acting like they have a mandate to do something that they do not have a mandate to do. It's not fair. It's not right. And we shouldn't put up with it. Now, I don't know how to fix that, but we shouldn't have to put up with this.
Yeah,
this is our country. It's not theirs.
100%.
Well, it even says in our constitution, we are supposed to be governed by the majority.
Yep.
Right? When was the last time government actually did something for the majority of Australians? I can't remember it. Right? Even towards the end of John Howard's term, right, in 2006-7, then there was a tide of change of doing stuff to keep people in power. We've got to get back to making sure that whatever the government does is it's doing it for the majority of the people.
Yeah.
And a majority isn't getting together with your mates in the Greens and your lefty mates in the Liberal Party and Pocock and silly bloody flaming Lambie, right? And just passing a bill. That's passing a bill for the minority. Because as far as I'm concerned, Lambie, Pocock, all the independents are minorities.
Well,
Look, I will say this.
Yeah.
You know, there's not going to be any limit. And they're doing it by stealth as well, by having corporations do it on their behalf if you're going after Facebook and all that, but I'll let you get into that in a minute. But, you know, look, I know I differ from my conservative friends on lots of different points. I'm not a conservative. I'm certainly not a lefty. But I've always been a Republican. I think I always will be a Republican. However, I think even those people that love the monarchy in this country would acknowledge that we don't want to have a system of government that rules over us. No. We're supposed to have a system of government. The government's supposed to be our servant, not the other way around. And so when the government is acting like this, especially when it's the Labor Party, who are supposed to be Republicans too, if they're going to carry on like this, imagine if we became a republic and these people were in charge with absolutely no guardrails at all. That really worries me.
Well, in theory, we have a Republican system of government because we elect people to represent us. We don't have direct democracy, right? There's very few countries around the world that actually has direct democracy. So our form of government is a Republican style where we elect someone, they go, but they're supposed to do what they were elected to do.
Well, a Republican style of government should have a constitution which allows individuals to limit the power of government over them, which we kind of had under the Magna Carta, and that's unclear now whether that stuff applies to us. But you're right. We should have this. However, if you're a Labor Party voter, your elected representative, your local member, doesn't actually represent you at all. No. The person, the place that I stay in Sydney at the moment, the member for that area is Dr. Mike Freeman. I think is a great guy. I've met him. I've met his son. I think he's very dedicated. However, if everybody in that area that he represents, MacArthur, actually wants him to do one thing, he doesn't have a choice because he can't cross the floor.
No.
So the Labor Party doesn't even pretend to represent their local constituents.
Not at all.
Yep.
Let's get into the details of the bill, because you make a great point, both of you. The idea that the government is basically passing the buck. They're basically saying, no, it's not our fault. You know, the government's trying to launder this radicalism of the bill through the complexities of delegation and regulatory outsourcing. So which delegation is it? It's ACMA. It's the Australian Communications and Media Authority. And basically ACMA is going to be the one that's sort of the neutral arbiter. Now, you guys know that how many bureaucrats dwell in Canberra. You know that Canberra was the only place that voted yes to the voice in terms of a state or a territory. Even the Northern Territory voted against the voice. And that's where these people are coming from. That's where they're coming from. It's the highest earning area in the country. So what sort of powers, what sort of things are brought into question? These are some various tweets from the senators that are coming up. The misinformation bill will actually go after people that even attack the public confidence in the banking system or financial markets. This is from Senator Rennick. He said, fancy trying to censor criticism of the banking system and the financial markets. That's so what's so concerning is how on earth did that clause even get in the bill? Well, maybe it's because the banks are donating to some of these members of parliament, right? And that's exactly what is mentioned in this particular bill. If you look at Part F in this particular thing, in the actual bill in the details, it says harm is defined as imminent harm to the Australian economy, including harm to public confidence in the banking system of financial markets. Senator Matt Canavan made the point, well, I mean, if you're going to do that with these laws, you know, public confidence, under these laws, those who called out the recklessness of mortgage-backed securities before the global financial crisis would have been censored, and they were right. And that's the point. And before I get you guys to weigh on this, the other aspect is medical misinformation, which even now I can't talk about on YouTube right on this live stream because we'll be nuked about the jabs and everything. But even with this particular bill in its current form, if this passes, if you even attack the Australian health approach during COVID, or you vilify the lockdowns, or you criticise the jab rollout or whatever, you're gone. You're gone. That's it. So if you're a social media provider, you could be fined 5% of your annual revenue. Revenue, not profit. Revenue. All the money that comes in. And that also pertains to anyone that's outside a government institution, or anyone that's outside a mainstream professional corporate newspaper or TV outlet. So stuff like us, stuff like the Light Australian newspaper, gone. We're subject to it. We're subject to 5% of our revenue if we're not properly policing misinformation properly. That's it. So they're clearly interfering in the public process. And the last thing I'll say on this is harm also to the operation or integrity of a commonwealth, state, territory, or local government electoral or referendum process. And that goes back to the point that was being made in the article, that they're basically trying to, this is essentially revenge from the government on the voice referendum. But gents, what were your opinions on the inclusions, the attack on protecting the banking system and the financial institutions?
Well, you're protecting the people that are feeding the politicians, aren't you? And that's what basically that's all about. The other problem is, and when you brought it up, is that ACMA is based, inside the swamp, right? The swarm of people down there, they're never ever going to go against their masters, right? Because they fear for their job. A lot of these people have jobs down there that are high paying, have all the extra perks, but if they were to try and get a job in the real world, they'd be, in a way lower position without the authority. So it's self-interest now. So these people are going to go along with these bills. They're going to curtail our freedoms and what we can and can't do in a so-called free society because of their personal interest of keeping their job. So ACMA is now going to become basically a quasi-police force.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's insane, isn't it? I mean, the idea that, you can't criticise these banking institutions, I mean, isn't this the monopoly or oligopoly, whatever the right word is, fighting back against the up-and-coming guys? I mean, if you start a financial institution, or if you're, an up-and-coming newspaper and you're trying to criticise the big guys, this is like some kind of investment or donation in kind to these entities. This is the establishment, stopping the little guys from coming up.
100%. It's going to stifle anyone wanting to start something a bit radical out there and a bit forward thinking and a bit free thinking and all that sort of stuff. Because to create disruption in an industry, you need to criticise the industry that is currently there. That's what disruption is.
That's right.
So we're now going to
Video Easy.
Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Right?
Netflix comes in
and eats all their lunch.
Yeah.
So are we going to see all innovation in tech, especially in fintech and all that sort of stuff, get stifled because of these laws?
Yeah, and also what gives them the right? I mean, you guys are international guys. This is like, I'm the baby here. I do a bit of reading and whatever, but you guys have seen the world. I've only been out of school for 7-8 years. It's funny, isn't it? I make you feel old when I say that, don't I? But when you look at this, what gives an Australian government, one of over 200 governments around the world, the right to charge any organisation 5% of their revenue? I mean, it's a shakedown.
Especially the global revenue. That sounds crazy. But look, you briefly mentioned about the vaccinations before. I appear on a different podcast that is mostly an American show, and I asked a question. So all I did, I just asked a question, and I said, when they say that we're supposed to listen to health advice given to us, otherwise you get nuked off these platforms, what happens if you're an Australian or a Canadian, where you've got state health ministers telling you something that's a little bit different to what the federal government's saying, and they're saying something completely different in relation to AstraZeneca to what the Americans are saying? Now, the Canadians were told that they could have a Pfizer, then a Moderna, only to find that when they went to the United States and went on a cruise, that the cruise line said, no, you're not vaccinated by our private company's policy. Yeah. So, of course, I sat here in Australia and went, well, I didn't really want to have the vaccination, but I had to because I had a sick relative in New Zealand. I didn't want to miss seeing her. But I'm sitting there going, well, if I'm going to have to pick one, which one should I pick? I thought that was a reasonable question, isn't it? Bang, nuked. So you couldn't even ask a question. But more to the point about this, let's say I assume that everyone here doesn't believe in the flat Earth theory, right? But it's a fun theory sometimes. Like, I've watched a few of these documentaries on what these guys believe, and they're trying to measure the curve and stuff like that. And then somebody will create a picture, and the ocean is falling off the side. Cool. Can't I listen to that? Can't I hear that? Or do I need government to tell me at 40 what is good for me? I don't think I need government to do that. No. But what I will say about the international stuff, so you have to remind me because I'm a bit rusty on this now, but the great Doc Everett, great Labor person, who was pivotal in creating the Universal Declaration of Human Rights at the United Nations, which Australia didn't really implement the way that other nations did, but we won't go into that. Articles 18, 19, 20, I think they are, has to do with freedom of expression, free speech, etc. We have fought, not us personally, but generations before us have fought really hard for the idea that you've got the freedom to be able to express whatever view you have without any interference from government. This is the US Bill of Rights, this is the fundamental first right that you've got, is freedom of speech. It doesn't matter whether what you're saying is true or not. It really shouldn't. And who's going to be the arbiter of it? You made the comment before about it being a nice day outside. Now, you might go outside and see it's a beautiful day, and I might go out there and say it's blisteringly bloody hot. Yeah. So should we get government to come in and then decide, well, you said it was a good day, I said it was too hot. They're going to decide what the exact preferred temperature of most human beings is, and then they're going to say which one of us is telling the truth. Where's this going to end? Yeah. The reality is I'm obviously using some silly examples, but if you've got criticism of government and you don't feel as though you can express it, that's a problem. But the real issue is how they're going to enforce this. Because what ACMA's going to do is it's going to essentially be threatening, holding something over the big tech companies and saying, well, we're not going to stop those people from saying something, but we're going to require you to do it. And what are they going to do? They're going to do what everybody does when a regulator's breathing down your neck. You overcompensate, you overdo it, you censor too much. The United States has just been through this. So I just think it's such a bad idea. And again, it doesn't have the support of the majority of the people. This is a disgrace.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean the idea that an international organisation can just be dobbed 5% of the revenue is nuts. I mean, any dictator could do that. It's like, what's the recourse? Okay, what if they keep saying no? Are you going to kick them out of the country? I don't think our governments have thought this through.
Well, how are they actually going to enforce it? Right? Okay, I'll go to Twitter, Elon Musk. Okay, here you go, 5% of your global revenue. You got to pay us. Well, Elon's going to turn around and say, well, get a judgment against the corporation that owns this for a start, right? So it's a US, so he's got to try and get a US judgment against it. These laws aren't in the US at the moment.
Yeah.
Right? Yet. They are coming in. So what Elon does is he moves Twitter to a country that respects free speech and the rights of a corporation, in a quasi offshore jurisdiction.
Oh yeah, but then the powerful nations will just turn around and put sanctions on them.
But
at the moment, you've got 30% of the world's economy under sanctions.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
But sanctions don't work. We all know sanctions don't work. So wherever you put sanctions, makes them richer, more powerful, and they internalise how they're doing. So all the government's going to do is make us poorer, us worse off, and all these companies are going to go to jurisdictions that are going to support them. And look, if I was a small Caribbean island nation, I'd be going, hey, Mr. Twitter, come and headquarter here. Bring 1,000 staff.
But this is the reason, not this specifically, but this kind of over-regulation is the reason I left Australia in the first place. Yeah. And I love this country, I really do. I love the people in it. I love Sydney. I've always loved Sydney. I was born in Perth, but I absolutely adore Sydney. It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful city. And Australians are just wonderful people. Yeah. But we're run by absolute... I'm trying to think of something that's not a swear word. I'll just leave it at that.
but the other, and you're exactly right. Everywhere I've been around the world, and I've done business all over the world, and advised families and corporations around the world, and the same thing keeps coming up. Oh, you're from Australia? Where's that? Oh, your politicians were trying to do this. We're a laughing stock on the world stage.
Matt Walsh but he's been saying it for a while, but he's just said it again recently. And I was sitting here going, well, the UK is probably the laughing stock. But no, we look at some of our rules, and I'm sitting there recently going, is New Zealand actually to the right of us all of a sudden?
Exactly.
What's going on?
And the other thing is, if you look at us, like GDP in the world, right? We're one. Let's round it to 1% of the world. If we take mining out, we're probably negative. But we're 1% of the world's GDP, 1.2% of the world's GDP, which means there is 98.8% of the world's GDP outside of Australia.
Yeah.
Right? 30% in America, 30% in Asia, China reason. So if you're a major corporation and you're looking at it, we're going to talk about the population. So there's 27 million people or something in Australia now. 27 million people, 1% of the world's GDP. You know what? Stuff it.
You're not going to risk 5% of your revenue.
I'm not going
for 1.5% potentially.
Exactly. So, well, it's actually less than that. It's going to be like 40% of one. So you're talking a rounding error in economics.
But that's why...
Right. So why would you risk it? You just go, stuff Australia. So we're going to be worse off.
Yeah. And Twitter's killing it. I mean, ever since they've got them going hard, it's the #1 downloaded app. I mean, it's doing very well.
That's why, if you remember, I rang you when Australia said, we're also going to sanction Russia.
Yeah.
And I was like, do we do much trade with Russia? And then the news, the legacy media actually brought it up and said, we do. We do 0.0001%. And the ABS or somebody said that's statistically indistinguishable from zero.
Yeah.
So, Australia jumps on that, and Vladimir Putin's there going, oh, no.
Shaking.
Oh, terrible. We've lost our trade with Australia.
Yeah, shaking. And what was it? It was like irrelevant stuff like barley and fertilizer, stuff we provide ourselves. Not the fertilizer so much, but barley. And it's we're a big exporter of that too.
Yeah.
It's so confusing. I don't know. And the idea that they were then justifying the whole the increase in petrol costs and the cost of living because of the Russia war in early 2022.
Yeah. Don't get me started on fuel.
Yeah.
My God.
We'll talk about defence in a bit because we do need to talk about our reserves. But talk about misinformation. I will be doing a video every day on this because just to close this topic off, it's crazy. I'll be doing something on every day to inform you guys about different elements to this bill. It's a 76-page bill, not very long to be honest. But I put a video video out today, and I just wanted to be clear about something because there's been some misinformation going out from online personality that has actually misquoted me. They said Joel said the bill's going to pass next week. That's not correct. If you look at the video, if you look at the transcript of what I actually said, the bill has submissions open now. That closes on Monday, the 30th of September. In fact, I put a countdown of when submissions close on my Instagram story, if you can watch that if you want. And it actually says, 5 days left, that's when submissions close. After that, this bill may not be passed till early to mid-October, maybe late October, because the Senate doesn't actually return to sit until the 8th of October. I've been talking to Senator Malcolm Roberts and a bunch of the other senators. They are deploying all the stops to stop this damn thing. And they get it. They get it. Where things stand right now is we've received over 10,000 signatures to our petition, thanks to you guys sharing that video. I only posted it 7 hours ago. From you guys sharing it out there, getting the word out, signing that petition. If you want to go above and beyond, share the video, go make a personal submission as well through the official website. But if you're happy with how I'm articulating my opposition to it as a part of the Light Australian newspaper, which has 200,000 prints, or the Ark Podcast, which gets 1 million views every week from all the clips, or the Turning Point Australia stuff we do with the elections as a third-party campaigner. If you want to add your name to those petitions, head to tpaust.com.au. We've got a very simple sheet there. We can just add your name, your email, your postcode. And if you want to subscribe, there's an option to tick if you want to subscribe to our emails. But we've got to defeat this thing. And I do have a bit of encouraging news for you guys on this, an update. Andrew Clennell yesterday was making the point on Sky News that he doesn't think this thing's going to pass because the Greens and the crossbench are currently at crossroads with Labor for other reasons. But I am not going to rest on my laurels. This is too dangerous. The idea that I could be held liable as a director for the Light Australian newspaper and we could be charged 5% of our revenue. This is a this is a volunteer funded and run entity. And they're trying to shut us down, but they want to protect the big corporates, the Australian newspaper and all of them who are exempt, all the government institutions. This is BS, and it must be stopped. I will not rest on my laurels on this until it's dead, like what we did in April, like what we did a year ago when we sent 25,000 submit. Do you remember that? In October last year, when I went away for a year, I said the reason the bill died was because you guys submitted 25,000 submissions to them. And it fell over because of the religious element of it as well. There was a lack of protections. They never fixed those protections. So I've got more information on that. I could talk about this forever, but I need to make some more videos for you guys to see that. But this makes me incredibly homicidal, which is why I've given you the disclaimer about swearing on this particular podcast. But moving forward, less from me, more from you guys. What did you want to say?
Before you get off this topic, just a couple of other things I just want to just say. When you had the legislation, I don't know if you can bring it back up on the screen.
Course, absolutely.
Because I'm actually surprised that the left isn't up against this.
Well,
it does worry me, though, that the scariest thing that you said is, well, the Greens aren't going to support it, so therefore it might not pass. I'm like, oh, thank heaven the Greens are here to protect us. My goodness.
But the reason the Greens won't support it, and this is why I believe the Greens won't support it, is because it opens them up to be censored. Mm-hmm. Because what happens here is this is a really, 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 really fucking bad tool for political censorship. Mm-hmm. Right? Xi Jinping will be sitting there at the moment going, fuck, I need to get this policy in place. Right? Yeah. He'd be sitting there going, thanks, Albo. We'll put this around our own parliament.
I'll have one of those.
I'll have
what he's having.
Well, actually, but actually, look, I don't want to be conspiratorial, right? That's Joel's job.
Yeah, that's right. But all my conspiracies have come true, mate.
Maybe this is the plan, right? Because what we're doing is actually worse, in my opinion, than what they've done in China. What's being proposed here. Yeah. But if you just bring up that legislation again, I think it's
the definition of harm, was it?
Yeah, I can't read.
Or was it 15? I can zoom in.
Yes, if you can zoom in,
please. It was 15F, I think you're talking about.
Is it 15 you're talking about? Or was it serious harm?
Go up. Oh, no, sorry. No, you're right. Just go down. So B, C it was. So vilification of a group in Australia society, distinguished by race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, intersex status, disability, ethnicity, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, we are currently experiencing a flux of it's in flux what gender is. Now, I think all of us know what the difference is between a man and a woman. Some people, for some reason, don't. They say that gender and sex are two different things. I don't agree, but that's fine. You can believe whatever you want to believe. That's my view on it, right? Now, when this was first suggested, the left who supports this, when they first suggested this, wouldn't that have also been something that would have just been censored?
100%.
Now, the left has got all sorts of ideas. Occasionally they have a good one, but they're never going to be able to get it out because they're not going to be in power forever. And then the Conservative government will come in and censor everything the left does. It's insanity. I don't get it. I don't understand it. And then when it comes to religion, so, okay, who is correct between the Catholics and the Protestants? Are we going to censor one or the other? Like, who's correct between the Muslims and the Jewish people, which is an issue at the moment in Palestine and Israel, but generally they've gotten along before. Who's going to be correct between all these different religious groups?
Yeah.
Or does government come in and say, well, we're going to assess who's correct and who's not?
Yeah, and the video this morning, I talked about this, and this is why, guys, I'm going to try and limit the amount I'm talking on this because I'm making a lot of video content on this. This morning, put a video out, 100,000 viewers. I mentioned the point. This thing is like the One Ring, the One Ring that we see in the Lord of the Rings.
Well, yeah.
It doesn't matter who's wielding it. It's going to destroy the person and it'll destroy everyone. And the problem we've got with this particular legislation is, and this is what I've given to the Light Australia management team, where they're going through all of our articles and working out which ones are violations, basically. But you could be in violation for financial reasons. If you're sowing doubt in the minds and the confidence of financial institutions in the banking system, public confidence, who defines that? So if I have an article, and there are 2 front-page articles we have of, bringing back cash, how you can't, Big Brother's watching your transactions and all of that, because it's becoming even more tighter with regards to those constraints and how much money you can get out of the bank. That is a violation. It's public confidence. The idea that, any idea that if you do a run on the banks won't have enough money, public confidence, bam, you're gone. That's how broad the definition is. That's just one thing. Climate change, whether you're on the right or the left, depending who's holding this ring of Mordor, they will police you. If you're on the left and you're locking down and you're threatening public infrastructure like they did in Sydney, blocking Sydney Harbour Bridge, getting on abseiling rope and jumping down, this will stop you, Greens. This will stop you, Antifa. And if you're on the right, So you've got big corporates that are actually funding these government parties, Labor, Liberal, and they're censoring you on the left, but also on the right. If the left wing are actually have this ring of Mordor and they're censoring accurate information, but what they just classify as disinformation or misinformation,
Maligned information.
maligned information. I think that's an Aussie creation. That word.
Yeah,
they can actually censor you.
That's what is in the thing.
In the bill. Yeah.
So it can be information that is true, but against the government's narrative.
Right.
So I trade the markets a lot. That's how I make, that's how I make most of my money. And I do very well trade the big 4 banks of Australia. Now, I'm not going to name them for the purposes of what I want to say right now. But if we were talking and I said, look, I think that ABC Bank is going to perform better than XYZ Bank for the following reasons. That's normal trading strategies. That's normally what strategists do when they sit down and talk.
It's called arbitrage.
Right? Well, it's spread trading between the two, right?
Yeah.
So, now that wouldn't be okay. Bank West decides to go cashless. We're not allowed to criticise that. Westpac, for example, if you have a look at their market cap, has fallen quite precipitously. They're no longer on market cap, the second biggest bank in Australia. And look, I know that part of the reason why was because of their interest rate exposure. But I think that Westpac will bounce back. I'm just not sure they'll bounce back today. It might take a while. So what if this passes? I can't say that anymore.
Yeah,
right. I mean it's just ludicrous. It's either poorly thought out or they've thought about it really, really well. And I actually think that they thought about it really, really well, because what they do with regulations is they create it in such a convoluted way you can't comply, and so they always have the right to look at you and they'll always find something you've done wrong.
So this bill will also destroy footy season. Because no longer can you go out and say Collingwood supporters are fools, right? or you can't go out and...
Or the Brisbane Lions are going to lose to the Sydney Swans next week.
Oh, well, yeah, who cares about aerial ping pong? But come and play a real game. But you can't criticise, in theory, in the media, because someone could take offence to it.
Exactly, and that's the big thing. You got financial institutions, you got climate change, which is left or right, depending on who's holding it. Medical, which could be anything. I mean, even that's often a left-wing thing as well. I mean, maybe the right wingers start censoring the topic of abortion. If you're on the left and you want abortion, maybe they could censor you. And on top of that, the government infrastructure that attacks the left. That attacks the left wing thing as well. But also in the right wing, we could be talking about 5G, 15-minute cities, digital ID, all that sort of infrastructure.
Great.
And the last thing I'll say is religious freedom. Guys, do you have any idea how many times the Christian Bible, the Old Testament, for the Jews, and also the Quran for the Muslims? I'm in the process of tabbing it. How many times it violates point 14C? I mean, 14C, vilification of a group in Australia society distinguished by race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, intersex status, disability, national or ethnic origin, vilification of an individual based on a belief that the individual is a member of such a group. You've got national and you've got race. Straight away, depending on who's holding this damn ring, it doesn't matter which way you fall on Israel-Palestine, you could be censored. It doesn't matter. So there's protests you saw in Melbourne of the left-wingers going out and having those clashes with police. Censored. You can't distribute the protest sign to get everyone out. Similarly, if you're on the Israel or Palestine...
Well, we can't pick on Tasmanians and New Zealanders anymore.
But you know what? I don't even think this will play out like this, because Conservatives are so cowardly when it comes to this stuff. It's their fault that this has been allowed to get so bad. And what happens is, out of the three of us that are on here right now, I can say anything I want about Stephen, right? Because Stephen's a white Christian, right? But you say one thing about me and I'm on the left and I'm a person of colour, oh, no, it's not allowed. And that's what's going to happen with this. Yeah. If they pass this, you'll get to continue to see people vilifying the majority of Australians for their religion and for their skin colour, because they're white and they're Christian, and everyone else, say what you like.
This is just the next step in the segregation of society. Because if you have a look through history, and it's in the Bible and the Quran and the Torah, it's in everything. Separate the people, they're easier to control.
That's right.
And this is all about that, keeping the people separated, dumb and happy, so they don't rise up against their masters.
Yeah, but they're keeping us separated, dumb and unhappy. Or maybe it's just us that are unhappy. I don't know. Maybe everyone else is sitting there going, yes, more government control. That's what I need in my life. I want government to come in.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's my problem.
Yeah, literally. Maybe that is your problem, more government. And that's the problem. These things did come under the Liberals. The whole idea, the E-Safety Commission was appointed by the Liberals. It was actually under ScoMo that this happened, that the E-Karen was appointed, the E-Commissar, and it was under the guise of protecting kids online. Now, we don't make rules based on the exception. The idea that we're going to make rules based on one person out of a million that has a third leg or something, whatever it is. You don't make legislation on that basis. And that's what they're doing essentially with this. I do have to make just a point to be absolutely crystal clear on this. If you go to the communication legislation, and the only reason I'm bringing this up is because someone's made a video about me, misinformation, on what I said. I didn't say the bill could be passed next week. It can't be passed next week. Submissions close next week. However, I did speculate and make the point that this might be happening because they're trying to do some kind of October surprise, or they're trying to even censor anything to do with what we saw in 2020, where there was a lot of information about the votes and how the swing states were in. Yeah. It became election quarter, because there was a lot of counting and the counting was very slow. So if you actually go to the communication website, which I encourage you to do, on the 19th of September, the Senate they will refer the provisions or the communications legislation amendment, the misinformation bill that is, to the legislation committee for report by the 25th of November. So this couldn't really be passed until after the 25th of November. However, as I mentioned in the video, submissions close on Monday next week. And the urgency is not because it's going to pass next week. It's because we only have a week to make submissions. And the problem with that is, they're trying to shorten the amount of time that you have to submit. so that we don't get the same amount of submissions that we did last time. That's why I'm trying to lower the barrier by adding you guys to a petition or getting to the website to make your submission manually. But we do need an element of urgency on this. We can't sit on our hands. We can't. So get behind the effort. We can beat this thing. It's not impossible. And we don't want to be relying on the Greens or the crossbench ever again. So we're going to have to throw everything we can at the next federal election. Gents, I do have to move on because we need to start talking about Anthony Albanese's misinformation and what he's been spreading. He claimed in a 10-second pitch, Mr. Albanese claimed that in his 10 seconds pitch to voters, we've halved inflation. And this is exactly what he had to say.
There's an argument that you're not very good at selling what you're doing. So here's an opportunity. The 10-second television news pitch. Why should people back Labor to get them through this crisis compared with the other mob, given we're months away from election? Just the quick pitch.
Because we've halved inflation while dealing with cost of living pressures, while creating on our watch 1 million jobs. We are making sure that Australians are looked after at what are difficult global economic times.
There's an argument that you're not very good at...
Now, look, I don't speak, economies or whatever he was talking, but can you break it down to me? How have you halved inflation?
He has halved inflation. He's got out the formula and gone, okay, I need to halve inflation, so I'll get rid of bananas, I'll get rid of milk, I'll get rid of fuel. Okay, we're going to do the inflation calculation on a stale loaf of bread and a cheese biscuit. Right. So what he's done is he's reduced his basket that he calculates all this on and gone, yes, we've halved inflation. I am the saviour. Right? The guy is the biggest clown that's ever walked the face. Oh, well, actually, no, that's not right. Chris Bowen's the biggest clown. Albo is very, very close to the biggest clown. Right. He has absolutely no idea how economics works. Nothing. Right? I don't know when the last time he actually went and bought a schooner or a pie or,
filled up petrol.
Filled up with petrol. The Comcar comes with 17 drivers and 14 servants or something. But inflation hasn't halved, right? It has slowly come back a little bit due to market forces or whatever, blah, blah. People are spending less out there. People are literally spending less. So, of course, stuff is going to reduce when people aren't buying it.
Yep. That's right.
Right? Yes, I've saved inflation, but I've fucking stopped everyone spending.
You know what it reminds me of? When they said flatten the curve?
Yeah.
It's like they flattened the economy.
Yeah. 6 days to flatten the curve. Yeah. Give me 6 weeks and I'll fuck the economy. Yeah. Right?
Stephen. Shakeel.
And that's what he's done.
Be fair, the bloke created 1 million jobs.
Oh, yeah, well, I haven't even got to that point.
What do you mean?
Right, we're 27 million people, but I've created 1 million new jobs. Where? In public service?
90% in public service?
Yeah,
Is that what it was?
99.9% in public service.
Well, it's a good way to win the next election.
No, there were 2 baristas created at my local coffee shop.
Beauty.
Right, yeah. Right. But before that, he sacked 7. Yeah, because there was no one around, during COVID.
So I do want to talk about this inflation thing for a minute because the US is...
You're a numbers guy, by the way, for the people that don't realise. You are a numbers guy. So
yeah, exactly.
Bad numbers. But it's all he gets bad numbers, so I try... The government said what? Yeah, okay, well, that's absolute rubbish. But so let's talk about inflation for a minute. So... when people say, I was saying this during COVID, when people say, we want cost of living to come down. No, you don't. Do not ask the government to do that. Do not ask your government to bring down the cost of living. Because when the cost of living is really, really low during a recession. Now, don't take my word for this. Go look this up yourself. The Reserve Bank of Australia, the Fed in America, all of the central banks, what did they say they were going to do to deal with this issue? They said they were going to crush demand. By increasing interest rates, increasing, pulling money out of the market. That's what they were going to do. They weren't going to increase supply. So, the economists are saying that a recession is overdue in the United States. I don't think we're far behind it. New Zealand's property prices have been sliding. It started to maybe pick back up a bit. Why did New Zealand's prices drop? Because the great Dame Ardern decided that
they all moved to the Gold Coast.
She wanted to cool the property market by restricting international investors. Well, cooling the property market means that your house, which is for most people the biggest investment that they make, is going to not be worth as much as it otherwise would. Wow, what an amazingly great plan former Prime Minister of New Zealand had. So these are the sorts of things that government does. So when you ask them to do something for you, we all know that what you wanted was cheaper groceries, rent prices not to get out of control, mortgage prices not to get out of control. That's what you wanted. The government's going to give that to you in a way that you really don't want, in a way that's going to hurt you the most.
Yeah, I'm from the government. I'm here to help.
Yeah.
Nine most dangerous
words,
from Reagan.
The other thing about this, I'll just talk about immigration for a minute when it comes to inflation. We have a critical housing shortage in this country, okay? That is really good for one group of people, property owners. Anybody who, someone like myself who doesn't have a normal proper job, who, lives off investments and things like that, it's great for us because asset prices go up. But it's terrible for everybody else. And that's the problem. Because a lot of people that invest in our markets, that invest in the United States, even more so, a lot of the profits are being generated by people that don't pay tax here, that they pay tax overseas. So they're actually taking all this profit, and the everyday working person is left behind. And here we are, sitting on the centre-right to further off the right on the political spectrum, talking about how hard it is for the everyday working class person to be able to survive and the middle class to stay middle class. Wasn't that what the Labor Party was supposed to be about? We're seeing the same trend to the United States. Government is always going to screw it up. The less of them we have, the better.
Oh, 100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
You should be able to take government out, put it in a sack and drown it. That's how small it should be.
Yeah.
Right. And the problem is we don't. Those 1 million jobs, and we're not joking when we're saying they were generated in government.
That's
'Cause
right.
it wasn't generated in private enterprise. Private enterprises have been shedding jobs. Was it the tech companies in this country have been shedding jobs left, right and centre. The mining companies.
Media is getting
media
smashed. Yeah.
is getting smashed. But they're all getting picked up. Like journos are leaving the major newspapers and then on a Friday and on a Monday joining a minister's office. Right?
Why
It's
would
ridiculous.
Why would you anyway? If you wanted to start a business, why would you look at starting it here in the first place? And it breaks my heart to say that I was born in Australia, but why would you? There are so many other options. I mean, just think back at 15 years ago, whatever it was, where we had that many changes to financial regulations that the major options market makers, which I know this is going to sound really complicated, but the people that provide liquidity to the markets left Australia. After warning successive governments for years, look, you guys keep changing the regulations. We can't just keep doing this. Just make up your mind and we'll comply with it. Eventually they pulled out. Now it got so bad that the Singapore Stock Exchange made a play to buy the ASX.
Yeah.
Right. Now, okay, that got blocked. But how embarrassing! Australia should be buying the SGX, not the other way around. And that's what the real consequences are. The real consequences are that Australian businesses suffer. The Australian economy doesn't do as well as it otherwise would. Even when we're booming, we're not doing as well as we otherwise would because of very, very poor management from government.
Well, here's a classic example. My bookkeeper, right? She packed up and moved to Bali. Still does my books. She's no longer doing it here in Australia. But not only that, 4 of her staff turned around to her and said, "Can we come too?" And they all picked up, moved to Bali. Now, she's expanding her business and getting bookkeepers in Sri Lanka and the Philippines at $28,000 a year that are trained here in Australia because they've all come to Australia as students, done accounting, gone back to Sri Lanka, gone back to the Philippines, and they're now doing my books and other businesses' books from the Philippines, from Sri Lanka, from Bali. And it's an Australian business where she's upped and left. And I know advisors that have done the same thing. I know pretty much if you're running an online business from Australia, you've got your head read. You need your head read because you should be doing it from a small island living on the beach somewhere because you can do it.
So I do a lot of data analytics.
Yeah.
And a quick side note, a few years ago, a mutual friend of ours, I was working on something and I said, look, I better create an Excel spreadsheet. I'll do it over the weekend. And he goes, I'll get someone to do it for us. I'll just pay him. I'm like, no, I'm not going to pay someone to do an Excel spreadsheet. What are you talking about? I'll do that. I used to do that when I was in bloody year 8. He rings me the next morning. He goes, "Have you done it?" I said, "No, I haven't done it because I couldn't be bothered." He goes, "Oh, well, here, check your email." It was done.
Yeah.
Beautifully done. I said, "How much did that cost you?" He goes, "Have a guess." Anyway, it cost him $5.
Yeah.
And that was actually more than he had to pay. He gave them a tip. I was like, okay. I haven't done an Excel spreadsheet since.
No.
Right? For $5, I mean, my time's worth more than that. Right? Now, I'm having this conversation a lot with people when I'm doing data analytics or anything else for that matter. If you were to, I'm talking to Americans about this, if you were to employ Americans and you had 3 Americans, average wage, 60, 70,000 a year, plus you've got payroll taxes and you've got to account for sick pay, etc., etc. You could have 100 people in Africa, let's say Kenya. The average wage there is $2,500 US a year. So you could have 100 people in Kenya. Maybe they're really inefficient, but I guarantee you they're going to be more efficient than the 3 people that you're employing in the United States. Now, the problem with this is I think we've got a trend, and Donald Trump talks about this a lot, where good jobs are being offshored into other countries because labour is cheaper. It's very difficult for our countries to be able to compete with cheaper labour, but we can compete on other things. But everything that makes our countries attractive, especially if you're international and you're looking for a place to invest, and everybody's international, by the way. If you're sitting here in Australia and you're looking to start a business, you don't have to start it here. There are other options. So, why would you do it here when you've got the complexity of regulations, when you can just go somewhere else and be treated better, have more freedom, and be able to live your own life without too much government regulation?
And really, as a business owner, you should be doing that. You should be weighing up all your options, right? Is Australia better or isn't it, right? COVID actually brought onshoring back. There is some stuff that we should do, and there is some things that we need to have here in Australia. And if we actually did have some of the things back here in Australia, they would be cheaper, purely and simply because there's a whole heap of costs and stuff like that. But it's going to create a situation where Australians need to support Australian-made as well. Like, we lost our car industry not because the cars were crap. We lost it because Australians stopped buying them. They wanted to buy a Mercedes and a BMW and a Jaguar and whatever it was, Bentley. I
haven't said that on air yet, but okay. Right. All right, for the audience, I have a Bentley, but I'm not some rich, out of touch person. I don't think I am.
Yeah. But we chose to buy overseas.
Yep.
Right. And I choose to employ people overseas. And a lot of the time is because they don't complain and whinge and want Monday off or Tuesday off or all the crap that goes with it.
So I'm pretty sure when I was either in high school or it wasn't much after that, I saw a documentary, and I think it was actually on Australia's most trustworthy news source. I'm keeping a straight face for this, for the misinformation, the ABC. And they did a thing on shipbuilding, right? Now, last time I checked, we live on an island. I'm not 100% sure, but I think we live on an island here.
Oh, no, it depends if it's flat Earth or not.
Well, it depends. To the other side of
the whole thing, yeah.
So what this thing was showing was that they were making these big ships in Korea, South Korea. They were earning about $100,000 a year. It was between 70 and 100,000 a year. And I'm looking at it going, hang on a minute. We can't do that here? What? I don't understand. So it wasn't like wages was the issue or the cost of doing business was the issue, but yet we don't make them here. I don't get it.
We used to have a shipbuilding industry. No, we don't anymore. We used to have a coastal shipping fleet.
Makes me homicidal. It actually makes me homicidal, the whole thing.
Basically, we have all the ingredients here to do everything, but we don't. Right? And a lot of it is Australians won't support Australians in a lot of stuff. Well, because if they did, we'd still have a car industry.
Well, there's some politics at play, but no, I don't think so. I think Australians will support Australians, but it has to be cost effective. You need to get bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Right? But I mean, look at that, what was it, the Monaro or the HSV or whatever it was, where the engines were made in the US and we made the car or the other way around.
Yeah. The Statesman, wasn't it? Because they sent them over there for police cars.
And it was like, I don't think it was a Stady, but it was something. But anyway, it was like 29,000 in the US and it was like 90,000 here or something. Like, okay, I get it, they've got a bigger market, but come on now.
Come on, yeah.
Right, and if you're going to do that, then, hey, all of a sudden a BMW or a Mercedes or something else looks like a much more attractive price, and it's luxurious, and it's, you know, but when what's his name? Turnbull was the Prime Minister, I think that was the first time I saw a BMW as a com car instead of the old Statesman's.
Yeah.
I mean, is that not embarrassing for our country? Australians deserve better. I mean, we're a proud people. We produce some of the best goods in the world when we produce stuff. I just think that we all deserve better, and I have to put the blame at government because they're the ones that want to lead. And if they can't lead, which they clearly can't, can you get out of the way and attract those people who have made something to come back to Australia and say, right, let's do this?
But so on shipbuilding, right, we've got Austal ships over in Perth, right?
Yeah, Austal.
Austal.
Yeah.
And they build the patrol boats for the Pacific Islands and the patrol boats here. They build the big fast ferries that go all over the world, same as Incat in Tasmania. And they do really good defence work. And they build something that people want. The industry wants. The defence industry wants a good patrol boat, and they build. Yes, they've got some problems, but, you know, they're working them out. But they're building them. They're one of the successful shipbuilders in Australia. They also build stuff in the US, the lateral class.
Can I ask something? Because talk about embarrassing. Again, the longer I talk about the ships thing, it makes me homicidal. It makes me want to swear like you. Maybe like a drunken sailor. You're from the Navy, right?
Well, I'll teach you.
Right. Please. I'm your humble student. So when it comes to when Trump had ScoMo at the White House, Austal, I think it was, had a ship there.
Yes.
Now, the Australian government, as far as my understanding was, at the time, didn't have any contracts with Austal for significant defence contracts. And it was embarrassing. It was like, so the American defence, it's good enough for the Yanks. It's good enough for the Yanks to have an Australian, organisation building these ships. But no, we have to offshore our submarine building at the time to the French because it hadn't been nuked at the time.
Yeah.
Nuked. But, and that...
Well, I mean, to be fair to the French, that's the only time I will be, to be fair to the French, given the state of Boeing, I think I'd prefer an Airbus. So maybe, maybe we should trust their subs more than the Yanks.
And when that was going on with Austral, they were building, I think it's the expeditionary deployment vessels for the Marines, right? Plus the littoral class ships for the Navy, which have been subsequently the US has modified that program, but Austral moved to, I think it's Mobile, Alabama, to build them for the US Navy.
That's right.
From
so
Australia.
I found the article, by the way. This is back in 2016. This is what's great about the show setup. So you're right.
Well, you've got a computer, we don't. We've just got to go
we've got
through our
pens.
memory. We've got pens and paper.
Mate. No, you're right. They did move the to Alabama, to build the ships. But yeah, there was the heading of this article is it's buoyed by Trump's plan to increase the size of the Navy fleet. I think by like a third or something. 300 something ships.
Yeah, I think he wanted to go to 350 ships from the 260 or wherever they were.
Where is that?
Yeah.
Where it makes me so homicidal. There's no country building projects in Australia, no new dams in like 50, 60 years, no, ships being built. And if you look back at historically in Australian history, and sorry if I'm derailing from what you were saying, but when we were getting ready for World War One, our politicians were so efficient and they were switched on. Partisanship with defence was non-existent. They, within 5 years of the war breaking out, I do believe, 4 or 5 years, they ordered the ship and it arrived within 5 years, the Tier 2 Navy, to Australia, and it even had some British admirals and whatever to sort of show our staff how to use it and everything, the top tier stuff, and it was ready 1 year before the breakout of the war. It's like, where is that long-term vision? Where are our aircraft carriers? We've got like a couple, but where are our serious ones?
LHDs, the Adelaide and Canberra, not really aircraft carriers, but the thing. The aircraft carrier, in my view, is actually going out now because of the way that it's worked. So you're bringing an aircraft carrier to a drone fight, right? It's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that we're not doing in this country is we're not supporting local manufacturing. There is manufacturers here of defence goods that can't get Australian contracts, but they sell to everyone else in the world. There's clothing manufacturers. There's drone technology guys, there's computer software guys all here in Australia that can't get Australian gigs because it's got to go to one of the big four.
Yeah. I've been saying this for years. If you go internationally and you see a stamp that says made in Australia, made in Great Britain, made in the United States, people normally, or made in Canada even, you don't see that as often. Normally that's associated with a certain level of quality.
Yeah.
That's what we should be selling. We certainly don't want to be selling most goods like really, really cheaply, but we should be selling things. We look at the clothing market. The stuff that's purported, allegedly made in Milan, we won't go into that, that comes with a premium, right? Why aren't we doing this? And we're supposed to be a powerhouse in this region of the world. But even like other things, like our wine industry, we've been so reliant on China. You go into Europe and Australian wines, you see a few, but not very many. And when I'm in the United States or Canada, occasionally I'll be in a restaurant, someone comes and goes, "Oh, this is amazing! Hey, this is the wine from Australia." I'm like, "Dude, I'm in America. I don't want to drink the stuff I get back home." But we should be showcasing all of that kind of stuff. Treasury wine estates should be out there showcasing all of these wines, and government people should be doing that. Our dairy and agriculture. I mean, this is where I know you and I have had a difference of opinion on this, but with the Chinese, I don't actually blame them. I don't think that if I was Chinese, I'd be pretty happy with what the government does, actually. Right? Because they go around, like, with this talk about them having bought farmland and stuff like that from here. They didn't want to. We made them.
Yeah.
We made them because they said, "Hey, like, your beef is amazing. Like, can you sell it to us?" No. Milk products is another one. This has been doing my head in for years and years and years. I talked about this 10 years ago. You remember Coles and Woolies used to always, if you went in for baby formula, there was like a limit.
Yeah.
You'd get 1 tin or 2 tins or whatever.
Yeah.
Because people were buying them and sending back to their families in Asia. Now, this could be a radical idea. Why don't we sell it to them? So I made some inquiries and I was told that they need to have a new milk processing plant here in New South Wales, preferably, or Northern Victoria or somewhere here in New South Wales. It's $20 million. That might be a lot of money for us. No. It's nothing for a government.
Yeah. Especially if it's got a return.
And no. So then recently when they had that milk crisis in the United States, they started getting stuff from here. But at the moment, what our milk industry has suffered, our dairy farmers have suffered, while Fonterra over in New Zealand is exporting their milk products. How does this make sense to anybody?
It makes me homicidal. So hang on, I didn't know that. You're saying that we weren't selling our beef or our milk to the
we're not selling it to them in the quantities that they want, right? And they couldn't get it.
Why not?
And so they've come in and said, "Okay, well, we'll buy the farmland ourselves." And again, I'm not here to defend China or the Chinese people, but
it could have grown our economy, right?
It could have. And in the meantime, if you're Chinese and you've been doing all this labour for the last few decades for the Western world, what do you have to show for it? You've got foreign money. You've got Australian dollars and American dollars and euros and pounds. And what are you going to do with that money if you can't buy anything from those countries? What do? Buy their debt, which inflates away anyway. What are you supposed to do? So, of course, they're going to go out and start trying to acquire assets in these other countries. Of course, they're going to do something like the Belt and Road Initiative. That makes perfect sense for them. What I would say, when I hear a lot of people criticise China for that, I'm like, no, don't criticise them. They're acting in their best interests. That's absolutely reasonable. The question is, why aren't we doing it? The Five Eyes nations of the world, which is the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, supposed to be this powerful group. And we're sitting there letting other countries increase their trade, increase their diplomatic relations, while we sit here and have our government worried that we have a citizenry that might say things they don't like.
There's a problem with your theory there, is because we value 165 different genders over economic input. And while we're arguing about, shit that doesn't matter, China and Russia, India, they're just getting on making sure that their people have what they need.
So they...
and they're just doing it.
So last time I was in Dubai, and Qatar for that matter, they've introduced computer programming or other types of IT-related stuff into the school curriculum.
Into the school curriculum, yeah.
Right? What are we doing? Now, I was actually looking up, I've always thought about, maybe I should go and do actuarial studies, but I can't be bothered. But I thought, I'm just curious, because I can shortcut, because I reckon it's probably leading into some of it. So I looked up a few of the courses. Actuarial studies, this is heavy mathematics to do generally with finance, investing, insurance companies. Very difficult course. Can you just to tell me what you would think would be the number one, the first module that you have to do for actuarial studies in Australia? Go on, have a wild guess.
You would think it'd be mathematics, but I bet you it's gender studies.
Close. Indigenous studies.
You're joking. Are you serious?
Now, if you want to do Indigenous, I've got nothing against Indigenous studies or gender studies or anything else. If that's what you want to study, no problems. But let's have a think about the kind of people that are going to go into actuarial studies. They're either crazy flamboyant people like myself, or they're going to be nerds. Generally, they're going to be nerds, right? They're the kids that never went out.
Spreadsheet job.
Exactly. They're the kids that never went out. They went home. They did their homework. They're good chess play. Like, these are the people we're talking about. A lot of them are foreign students as well. You're going to come over here. We've got 900,000 foreign students in this country. They're going to come. They don't care about our Indigenous issues. They don't care. How's that going to help them when they go back to India or China or Japan or wherever? It's not going to help them. Why is that part of this course?
Didn't someone do an acknowledgement of country when they're in the Middle East? One of our ministers. Is that right? Do you remember that?
Yeah. And they just would have looked at him and gone,
just like,
oh my God.
We are the first people.
So I went to Fiji earlier this year. This year, last year? No, this year.
Oh, this year.
Yeah. But where did you keep up my travel diary?
No, you told me.
Because you lose track. Yeah.
So I would travel so much. But so I was in Fiji, and the plane comes into land, and one of the airlines, I won't name which one, announces the same welcome to country thing, and we recognise the Indigenous population, or the whatever they say, the leaders,
past, present, and emerging.
And I'm sitting there on the plane. I'm like, are you fucking serious?
In Fiji,
where you have a situation. I'm Fijian Indian, for those of you that don't know, but I was born here in this country. Where you have a country where the Indigenous Fijian population are really pissed off at the British for having taken the Indians and giving them these land leases and then putting them in Fiji, and the Fijians say, hey, we want our country back.
Yeah.
And the Indians go, hey, hang on a minute, because when the Indian Prime Minister came over, the Indians said, hey, we got to go somewhere. Can we go to India? They're like, no, you got a new home. Like, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
The Brits go, oh, it's not our problem. Fiji's become independent. So this is an issue. Now, mostly this issue has kind of been okay for a while. But, you've got half the country are Fijian. You've got half the country which are Indian heritage.
Yeah.
And you go in there and say that. And you could actually hear the people that were on the plane that lived there just, like, fuming about it.
You would have been aghast.
Oh, and so I get off at the airport, and some of the flight crew came up, because I was the only person up the front of the plane, came up and said, oh, hey, like, I just saw your face. Was everything okay when we landed? Was a problem? I'm a frequent flight. I was like, do you understand what you guys have said? Like, do you know how, like, divisive that is in Fiji? What are you trying to do? Start another coup?
Civil war.
That's the thing. What we say here, it doesn't apply to other countries. If you want to sit here and bullshit each other in Australia, you go for it. But the thing is that Australians don't like this either. And most Aboriginal people that I know, they hate this stuff.
Yeah, and it's not shocking why we're seeing so many countries or companies they're dropping ESG now. They're dropping it. Like, I think it was Microsoft. After
go woke, go broke.
That's right.
Right? You've got all these companies that embraced ESG, and their share prices are plummeted.
Yeah. Like,
oh, come on, Budweiser Light's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, if you like water.
But see, here's the thing with ESG stuff, right? Yeah. And this is something that there is actually some suggestion now the US is going to be looking into this. I've been saying this for such a long time. I won't name the companies, but some of the major asset management companies in the world are behind a lot of this ESG stuff. What they do is they get the boards and they say, you either do this or we're going to pull funding. And so they've got to make a calculation and go, well, even if the share price falls, we kind of have to do this anyway, right? And, of course, this is subject to lobbying. Now, here's the thing. Some of these companies have contracts because pension funds are a little bit different to what we have here with superannuation. At least here you can opt out of an industry super and you can self-manage some of your super. Over there, a lot of the funding for this, for government workers, is sort of in a trust, and the trust then gets invested into these companies, right? And then those companies go around and do all this sort of stuff. And it's the same thing really with the industry super funds. Somebody has to explain to me how being a former union boss qualifies you to be an investment manager for a superannuation fund.
Yeah.
I don't think it does. I think what it does is it actually creates a loop where money goes into the super funds. The super funds then give money back to the Labor Party, and it just goes around like this.
Yeah.
And you can tell this by having a look at the returns, the average returns for the industry super funds in this country compared to a place like Denmark. And you actually see that there's a little bit being taken off the top, in my opinion.
And exactly, and the union leaders used to be, people that had been in the industry for decades. So they had that enormous wisdom, and now it's sort of like a jobs for mates. It's hand in glove with the Labor Party. It just makes me sick. But I was going to mention before, you guys were talking about, the idea that capital is becoming more scarce in Australia. People are taking it overseas. We were talking on and off camera about that. I very early on in the show, I brought this graphic up. This is the millionaire migration, if we can blow that up a little bit bigger, of the actual millionaires around the world. And the red circles are where millionaires are leaving, and the bluish teal circles are the ones where they're going to. So the UK and China and India, they're sort of leading the world in the amount of millionaires leaving. The UK losing 9,500 of them, China losing 15,200 of them. They're probably trying to get their money out of there. India losing 4,300. For now, in 2024, Australia is benefiting 2,500. But as you guys are perhaps warning, don't let me put words in your mouth, we may look more like the UK in the coming years because of the restrictions on everything with regards to business and red tape.
So have a look at the UK. If you bring that back up again, have a
Those
look at the
UK are horrifying.
Yeah, I reckon that's low for the UK.
Yeah.
But have a look at Italy, 2,200. And that's because basically the day the UK stopped nom-doms, right, or announced that they were going to stop nom-doms,
Sorry, non-doms for the audience.
This is why I'm not going to go back to the UK.
Yeah.
Right?
So non-doms means you can live there and be basically tax-free.
Okay. So
Well, it's a bit more complicated.
It is a bit more complicated, but that's it. But Italy announced a program that basically said, if you don't want to live in the UK, come here. Greece did the same thing. Have a look at Greece, 1,200.
So lower taxes.
Right, so lower taxes. UAE's
been great, but they've introduced... But you
can get around it.
Yeah.
Right. There is ways to get it.
Let me talk about
9.5% on local profits.
Yeah, exactly. But even then, I don't know. You should have a look at what they've done with the real estate market. They got McKinsey, I think, in.
The real estate market's still a basket case.
Yeah. But let me talk about this UK thing for a minute, because let's put this in perspective.
Yeah.
UK has a population of, well, it was 60, what's it now, 80 million, something like that. Right? They've lost 9,500 millionaires. That's right. China has got a population of 1.5 billion or more. Yeah. They've lost 15,000. So you would have to multiply by 30 that number to get the same sort of rate, all right? Right. That's ridiculous. I've got friends of mine that are in some of the really, places like Knightsbridge and, like really... billionaires row type places in the UK who have said to me the houses are basically empty. Everybody's leaving. Okay, I'll get into non-dom because people think it's just a rampant tax dodge. Sort of, maybe, not really, is what my comment to that is. The reason they had that in the first place was because people who were living in the vast domains of the British Empire, who would then come back to the UK, didn't want to be taxed in the UK as well as elsewhere. Yeah. So the UK had a thing called non-domicile taxation, and it was remittance-based. And what it said was, you're taxable on your international income from all sources. However, we won't tax you on it until and unless you bring it into the country. Yeah. So if you've got business in another country, you can continue to have that business there. We're not going to charge you tax right now because you're still doing other things, but when you bring the money in, then we'll tax you. And so they've made such a big deal over this for years now, and they got rid of it. And so all of the foreigners have gone, well, I'm not going to give you half of everything I earn internationally when I'm only here 3 months of the year. Bye. Yeah. Lunacy.
So hedge fund managers that moved back to the UK are now gone, stuff it, we're out of here again.
Yep.
Right. So they were actually bringing people back into the UK. And now everyone's gone, well, I can go and live in Italy and still have the same thing, or I can go and live in the UAE, or I can go back to Thailand or wherever.
Malta, Ireland. Anywhere in the Middle East. Qatar looks pretty good these days.
Because
pretty crap weather as well, in the UK.
Oh, exactly. But these people are highly mobile. They don't live there, 24/7, 365. They're there for 3-4 months of the year, and they move around multiple homes and so forth. The largest one of the largest groups was Russians, right? And they were moving to, and why wouldn't you want to live in the UK versus Moscow, right? And a lot of it's business. More business gets done in the UK than got done in Moscow. Right.
So you take me, I'm not quite in that category, but I'm doing okay, right? Because it was the first time I could really travel since COVID last year. I left here on the 28th of January. I came back for a 1 day here on my way to New Zealand from overseas because I had a death in the family. And then I went back overseas again. Other than that 1 day, I left on the 28th of January. I didn't come back here until the end of the year in November, or December it was, for my birthday. I was away for 10 months of last year. And I went to 15 countries, 18 countries, something like that.
Bouncing around everywhere.
Yeah.
You used to do what I used to do.
Yeah. Some of which was business, some of which was pleasure. But who would in their right mind say, you know what I want to do? I want to declare everything and pay all my taxes in Australia and New Zealand and the UK and the United States. Who's going to do that? So people, they're not trying to dodge taxes. What they're trying to do is they're trying to simplify the situation. And there's a lot of countries out there that are not, if I can use the term, legacy countries, that say, you know what, we're going to compete and we want to bring you here.
It makes me homicidal because we were talking about public sector jobs mainly being the ones that are created, not private. It's because of the capital. It's because of the and it's not just, and this is what Nigel Farage is warning of during the election and even now, it's not just big money. You know, if there's one thing money can do, it can move very easily, very mobile. Rich people can do that. But the other thing is, the young up-and-coming entrepreneurs around my age, you know, mid 20s to late 30s, you know, that have ideas and they're going to build the country, take it to the next level over the next 50 to 100 years. I mean, those people are leaving. They're going to some of these places. They're not millionaires yet, but that's not even really.
That's how I made my first lot of money anyway, right? Or the first lot of like serious money. Was I was just tearing my hair out. I just could not do anything in Australia, right? I got to 28. I was, an associate director of a reasonable sized financial services company here. Gave that up to go to Dubai to try to pitch the Arabs a derivatives trading hedge fund. And anyway, certain things happened in my personal life. I came back here, couldn't quite get things together because I was dealing with other things. Finally, somebody headhunted me essentially to Switzerland and said, come over here. And I was like, yeah, I've heard it all before, whatever. I get over there, and in less than 6 weeks, what had been, at that point, 15 years of me trying to work out how to do it in Australia, in less than 6 weeks, not only was I licensed, but I was licensed, approved, and funded to do what I wanted to do.
It's nuts.
Right?
That's nuts.
So, again, I don't want anyone to get the impression that I'm trying to bag Australia. I'm not. But what I am trying to suggest is that if you want to keep entrepreneurs here, right, people in your age group, people that are a little bit older, and you want to keep them here, you've got to give them the opportunities. And when government becomes a hindrance to those opportunities, it's important for government to recognise that and say, okay, this is not what we intended, so we're going to get out of the way. Because otherwise you lose people. I'm not going to come back to Australia to live. Why would I?
Yeah.
Right? I've got assets here. But why would I come back here and at this point and give up half my income?
Yeah, and one of the other things that around this is Australia is really a property-driven nation, right? The world is changing, right? We're becoming a tech, we're becoming a highly mobile workforce. We're not really embracing that. Our VCs and our early-stage funders aren't there as they are in Silicon Valley, or they are in Israel, or they are in Malaysia, or they are in the UAE, right? There's more, I suppose I'd call it chance capital in some of these other places in here, because we look at everything as property is stable, so I'll just put my money in property.
Yeah. Even in that case, right, if you were a property developer, as opposed to somebody who just buys property and holds it, with the exception of your family home, if you're a property developer, go live in New Zealand.
Yeah.
No capital gains tax.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? Like, we're just not... We're not competitive.
The snapshot of the economy is disastrous, and I think it's really encapsulated really well in this particular tweet, which touches on a few different things. I'm eager to hear where you guys want to take it. This is from Migration Watch Australia. They're a great channel. You should definitely follow them on all platforms. They basically went on this rant about the state of the economy. They said Australia's population just hit 27 million. Latest figures show 509,000 migrants arrive in 12 months. Right now, we have nearly 800,000 international students in the country. Real wages haven't grown in decades. Rent has surged as high as 40% in 1 year. House prices have nearly doubled in 10 years, locking people out forever. Now working Australians are going homeless, families are living in tents, people are having to leave the towns they grew up in because housing is too unaffordable. Labor said they'd cut immigration. Liberals said they'd be strong on immigration. Greens and other parties said they cared about renters. They lied. Why? Politicians are paid to represent you. The politicians paid to represent you can afford their homes, they can afford their investment properties, but they can't afford the time to talk about immigration. This is the result. To them, Australians come last. And then he's got an Australian car park with some people living in a tent because they've got no other option. So well done, Migration Watch.
That is an absolute disgrace, right? Those poor people have probably, I mean, I don't know, but presumably they've done nothing wrong, right? Now, it's where the so-called liberal side of me will come out, right? Immigration, we're a country of immigrants. That's fine. But you have to have the facilities to have them. What are they going to do? If they cut immigration, okay, we'll cut it in half. You get 250,000 in the next 12 months. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
This is outrageous. But the real sad thing about it was a report, again, actually, on the great old ABC earlier this year, that people were so desperate, especially older people who are relying just on the pension, they were so desperate that they were actually skipping meals in order to feed their pets, right?
Wow.
Now, you talk about some, like, lonely older woman or older man, you know, they've got a cat or a dog, it's their only companionship. And then you say to them, well, why don't you just give the cat up and put it at the cat shelter? But no, like, this is the person's only companionship. Can we give our older Australians some dignity? If we can look after all these other people that we're going to bring in, can't we give them some dignity? And then some of them who are waiting for community housing, again, who have done nothing wrong, they listen to government in the previous generations. They listen to government who said that they'd be looked after when they get older. And there's 7 and 8 year waiting list, 10-year waiting list to get into community housing. And then, by the way, if it's government funded housing and it doesn't allow you to have a pet, and you say no to the property, then you don't qualify anymore. You've got to go to the back of the queue. This is how we treat Australians who've lived their whole lives here, who've worked, paid their taxes, or raised a family, who don't have a lot of resources. This is how we treat them. We're going to bring in new immigrants at our cost. Not immigrants that have come over and self-funded and applied and done, you know, what my mother did when she moved here in the late 70s. No, none of that. No, we're going to just bring them over at our cost, and there's nothing left over for them. And if I can just say one last thing, this is one of the complaints that I've heard in the UK. They're talking about getting rid of or withdrawing the winter tax credit, or the winter winter fuel payments,
the fuel credit for oil. And
I don't know why Keir Starmer can't understand why there's such an uproar. Don't tell me that the whole of the UK is all of a sudden some right-wing nut jobs. No, you are going to leave millions of families and millions of people in Britain cold because they won't be able to afford it. What are you doing? Of course they're going to resent immigration. And the sad thing is that those immigrants that have come here for a better life from oftentimes some pretty devastating circumstances end up being scapegoated and end up not being welcomed as they otherwise would be. And again, whose fault is it? It's government's.
So it exacerbates existing problems. So just to be clear, the winter tax credit, that was the government subsidising to bring the cost of the...
I can't remember, is it a tax credit or is it a direct credit?
I think it's a direct credit on the purchase of fuel oil and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. And obviously it gets a lot colder there than it does here. I mean, the last time I was in the UK, the sun had set at 3 o'clock. I was on my way from London to Brighton. It was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was pitch black outside. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Especially if you're up in the Midlands and Yorkshire and, you know, up into Scotland, it can be bloody blistering cold for 4 or 5 months of the year.
Yeah.
Because we don't have those extremes here in Australia, so it hits the Northern Hemisphere harder than what it does us. But we've still got the same problem. You know, you imagine living in a tent, like in that car park in Victoria in the middle of winter, when that wind's blowing from the south and it's icy cold. You know, I complain about it in Queensland being cold, right? But those people there... And
what are you going to do if you're the Labor Party? Albo, what are you going to do if that person who's in the tent, you know, gets on their smartphone and has a whinge about things? You're going to shut them down for misinformation, for you know, destabilising comments about the economy or the country? Is that your
we
plan?
halved inflation. That's misinformation. We halved it. You're wrong. You know, you're not living in a tent. That's bull crap.
Exactly.
That's what they'll do.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting. It makes me homicidal. And that's the thing. You guys have been around longer than I have. You've seen that we can do it. You've seen that you don't have to be involved in politics, that the government generally took care of things 20, 30 years ago, and we're still running on the coattails of that to an extent. But, it doesn't take long to squander it.
And that's because government has gone away from basically being there for the people to being there for itself. Right, a lot of the stuff that we're debating here, misinformation bill, gender identity, whatever it is, all the stuff that...
Culture wars.
Wars, basically.
Yeah, it wasn't a thing.
No, it wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a thing in government. But yeah, people talked about it in the homes and they're freely able to talk about it and they got on with their lives that didn't do it. But as soon as government gets involved, people then defer, government's got to solve it.
Yeah.
The minorities step up, they've got to solve it for me, I'm discriminated against this, that, and the other. No, piss off.
Yeah.
Right, let's get back to the basics. Let's get back to looking after our country. Like 27 million people up there in a country that's the size of the USA with 400 million people in it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. The reason a lot of our infrastructure is shit is because we've got 27 million people. Problem is, we're probably at the point where our infrastructure can only support 25 million. It's not a question of big Australia, little Australia or whatever. It's a question of, can we sustain the population?
Oh, look, I think we can actually. Personally, I do think we can, and even if we restricted immigration, our population would still increase over time, right? But I do think we would have the capacity to be able to do that. But the problem is that, like you just said, we're going to sit here and talk about misinformation bills, culture stuff, and the rest of it. We could sit here instead, which is our area of expertise, and say, right, what do we want to do to increase the economy? What are the good jobs that we can bring back to this country? What are some of the policies that we'd like to see to make it easier for small businesses to start up? Look, registering a business here, very, very easy to do. Getting bank accounts, very easy to do compared to internationally, right? There are a lot of pluses, but there are also some negatives and things that hold us back. And I don't understand why politicians don't actually want to speak to people like us and say, hey, like what is it that you guys think would be helpful to bringing more businesses in?
Yeah.
We don't have it. Now, Kerry Packer once said at the inquiry, right?
1991 inquiry.
It was 97. I think I was about 12 when I watched it. I think it was 97.
Infamous. Hilarious.
He made the comment, I think the most popular comment was, of course I minimise my taxes. Anybody who does it needs a head read because it's not like you're spending so much, setting it so well, I should donate extra. Leaving that comment aside, though, there was something else that he said that always struck out for me. And he said, since I was a kid, there must be 20 or 30,000 new laws that have been passed, and I don't think the country's that much better a place. Well, I'm 40. I'm younger than what he was in that clip. The country is fantastic in a lot of ways, but I don't think we're better than what it was in the 90s.
No.
I think we were better off back then, except for the technological advancements we've had. I think in a lot of ways, the 90s and the early 2000s were a great time, right? And now we've just got government interfering with every little part of our lives. And like Albo's thing saying, oh, hey, I want to restrict social media use for young people because I want to see them out playing in the park and out, playing netball or volleyball, whatever he said. Yeah, I'd love to see that too, mate. But this is not your job. Your job is not to parent the children of Australia. Who the hell do you think you are?
I can remember.
Right? You've got some of these inner city Melbourne and inner city Sydney people that vote for you all the bloody time, who live in apartments. What do you want them to do with their kids? Sorry,
I can remember having a conversation with an elected member on a federal level, and I said to him, why don't you just go to Canberra and do nothing? He said, no, our job is to go and create legislation so we can get the sound bites, so we can get the media, so we can get re-elected.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, so you're just going to pass legislation, good or bad, for the sake of being seen to do something? I was asked once by a group of political people to what would be the first thing I would do to stimulate the Australian economy, and it's quite simple: remove fringe benefits tax. Right? Remove fringe benefits tax and allow the big lunches and corporate lunches and all that sort of stuff to happen again. You would, I think, the fringe benefit tax raises $1.5 billion a year.
It's ludicrous.
It's stupid. But if you got rid of it, you'd probably raise $10 billion in GST because of all the money that would be going through restaurants, car dealerships, car washes, all the services sector. Mind you, that is the sector that is struggling the shit. Albo doesn't give a fuck, right? Because he's got 17 maids and 35 people that go and do everything for him.
Do they have to pay FBT on the Comcar chauffeurs?
Exactly what they should do, right? And they've got staff. And this is the problem is that the people that are really struggling, and it's our service sector, our hotel sectors, our cafes, our restaurants, our bars. You know, it was the 90s when everything was humming in that restaurant sector, right? You'd go out and you had to book a table. You had to book a table. You couldn't just rock up.
No one was at home. No one was doing Netflix. They were out.
The Thursday and Friday lunches and all that sort of stuff. Business was being done in restaurants. Fair enough, there's food and booze and, you know, all that sort of stuff going. But the economy was humming.
I remember being back in Perth, junior broker. The boss of the company gave me the corporate credit card saying, look, because you're so young, you can keep drinking.
Yeah.
Take these clients out. Drop 10 grand in a night. But then they'd go in and do a multi-million-dollar deal with us the next day.
Exactly.
Right? Now, what are you supposed to do if somebody from overseas comes in? Okay, I've got the corporate credit. Is it my expenditure? It's somebody else? This is just lunacy. But here's again the issue. We live in a globalised world, a globalised economy where both money and people are mobile. So all of these little taxes, right, they're not applicable to other people who live outside of this country. So foreign companies can come in here. Foreign people can come in here and buy properties here. They're not subject to capital gains tax. They're not subject to all these other things. They're not subject to FBT. So you can have somebody coming from another country that gets to fly in here first class or business class or on a private jet or whatever and be chauffeur driven around and all that sort of stuff. They don't have to pay any of those taxes. Who are we hurting? Australians. Yeah. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be wrong about this, but as I understand it, FBT actually applies to the foreign expenditure of Australian taxpayers when they're overseas on the company's dime. Is that
I think
accurate?
so. I'm not 100% so.
Why would you do that?
Yeah. But the whole FBT thing doesn't make sense. Payroll tax doesn't make sense.
No, there's the LCT.
LCT, luxury car.
I'm getting an education just sitting here Googling terms because, guys, you know I've got a lack of education because I went to university. You have to unlearn a lot of crap.
Yes.
So because I'm only 27, I was in uni.
So I did really well, people, because I went to a public school, where you had to get knifed and stabbed and put the boot in, and then I joined the Navy and got a really good education there. And I missed university and I missed all that disinformation era.
But you've been out there. The life is the best teacher, and experience and failure are the best teachers. And so when you're talking about fringe benefit tax, I'm like, I've heard of it. I vaguely remember what it was. I Google it, and I'm like, these people are nuts. Are you serious? Yeah. So the employer assesses what the value of these fringe benefits are. Including, the allowing an employee to use a work car for private purposes, car parking.
Which could be it's just driving at home.
Yeah,
so what they want you to do is they want you to park the car at the employer's lot and then take your own car, which means that an employer who maybe has 4 people working for him, he's a plumber or something, gets 4 people. Now he's going to pay extra for the yard to park those 4 cars instead of just having his employees take the cars home. What's the plumber going to do? He's just not going to declare it. That's what he's going to do. And then you've got the tax office who's going to, if they ever find him, is then going to come after him and go, right, bang, we're just going to nail you to the wall. And who's being hurt? The small middle-class bloke who's just trying to have a go.
So what's also included is, for the benefit of the audience and frankly myself, paying also an employee's gym membership, providing entertainment by way of free tickets to concerts, reimbursing an expense incurred by an employee such as school fees, giving an employee discounted loans, giving benefits under a salary sacrifice arrangement with an employee. So they as a employer, they have to actually assess that themselves, submit that to the government in a similar way to the GST self-declaration, and then what percentage of that is taxed?
Now, if you ask employees, like employees that I have, you ask them what would they want, a lot of it is non-cash benefit. Right? They want a gym membership paid for by the company. Right. They want the access of a company car, a phone, blah, blah, blah. But we can't do it because we get slugged with the FBT.
Right.
But so here's the other thing with it.
Stupid.
The way that they calculate this. So let's say you're a big company. I know you've got 10,000 employees, right? That gym membership is going to be pretty heavily discounted, but because it was a fringe benefit, again, the way I understand it, you've got to calculate it as if how much was saving has that person individually got, not how much have you paid on their behalf. This becomes very interesting when you salary sacrifice things like cars. I love this. This is brilliant. Brilliant stuff. Why don't you, if you're going to let people salary sacrifice, why don't you just let them deduct it straight off their tax returns? But no, they've got to go through a provider. Now, what the provider does, but all the providers that I've come across, there could be some exceptions, the provider charges a much more significant interest rate than the going rate. So you might qualify for an interest rate at 5%, but they'll slug you at 12%, right? So because they've done that money is then coming out of your pre-tax income. You then have to pay fringe benefits tax on the alleged saving, but you're not actually saving anything because of the higher interest rate. So now you're in a worse position than what you were had you not entered into that arrangement in the first place. What a win for Australian workers. Now, if the government wants to do something for workers, how about these ideas? Long service leave, why don't you allow that to accumulate in a separate account where the employer just pays it into a separate account so that those people can move jobs? So that when people first start off in life and they're 15, they're working at Macca's, and they get to 20 and they're working at a bar part-time, or they work at university, or they're studying at university or whatever, that all of that time can accumulate, just like their sick pay. Why don't we allow them to do that? The construction industry, especially in Queensland, does that. If it's a good idea that was fought for by the unions, and it was a good idea, which I think it is, why not allow that to happen for everybody? Right? The other one that I'll say in taxes is small businesses. The hardest time for small businesses for them is when they start up. The first 3 to 5 years, they almost all fail. Now, one of the things that they do is they make you deduct your original investment into those businesses over time. Now, then when the economy isn't doing very well, we'll give you a $20,000 immediate write-off. Why don't you just let them write it off immediately? The effect of this would be the government would have the same amount of revenue come in. It would just come in differently over a different period of time. But the small business owner, that family that's mortgaged their house to put the money in to go and buy a deli or a cafe or whatever, that family can recoup their money much, much quicker. And it effectively would be like giving them a subsidy without it costing the government anything. Yeah. I've said that to politicians all over the world when I was involved in the Chamber of Commerce more actively. And every politician I've spoken to says that sounds really good. That would be a really, really good thing for us to do. And do you know how many have actually done it? 0. Yeah.
And that's because politicians and the way government budgets are done is, if I deduct this, I've got to deduct something over here. No, if you deduct this, you're going to increase this. The politicians let's just say they some of them probably do understand it, but they play politics all the time. And in doing things like getting rid of FBT or getting rid of all that or changing the way that deductibility is done for small businesses, revenue would come in from different spaces, but because it's not quantifiable, they don't put it into their budgets and that.
Well, Kamala Harris is talking about the United States. Okay, I'm going to give a $50,000 immediate deduction to start-up businesses. Okay, well, why don't you make it $300,000 then? That's the average amount spent for somebody to set up a cafe or, buy a few utes and set yourself a business, $200,000 or $300,000. Why don't you just let them deduct the whole amount? Yeah. Well, what's the difference? It's literally not costing the government anything. No. Because you're going to deduct those assets anyway, so why make them deduct it over a 7-year schedule or a 12-year schedule or whatever? Just give them the deduction straight away. Yeah. And this is the thing, we know this. I don't think that the everyday person would understand tax law and economics in this way. But the bottom line is that the governments have advisors and they just don't care. I think that's the bottom line. They do not care.
Well, what they... And I'm dealing with some government-appointed advisors on a couple of transactions at the moment. The biggest problem with these people is they don't want to lose the next contract. So they will do anything to milk the situation. They will do anything to make sure that they get the outcome that the minister wants, right? Not the outcome that should be the best outcome. So they give the advice to the minister that the minister wants to hear, right? Not the advice that the minister should hear. And that's because self-interest at the moment inside the entire swamp, right, that is our government systems, and this is council, state and federal level. It is just all about, I've got to stay on the rort. I've got to stay on the rort. I've got to stay on the rort. Right? And it just dumbfounds me. Something that we can do in the private sector for, say, 10 grand, right? The same contract in government is 110 grand. Why?
Well, that's an easy enough answer.
Because of the bullshit that the government put on and all the bits and pieces and the checklists that are going to be done.
So I was dealing with a tier 3 contractor to a tier 2 contractor for one of the mines, and they said to me, what do you think of this contract? I said, I don't know anything about mining operations. I said, but that price does seem a little bit high. I said, no, the manager of the contractor is unhappy that we're not charging him enough. What? Because they get to tack 10 or 20 or 30% on top of it. So they actually wanted that company to charge them more. And this is the sort of thing that happens when you get bureaucracies involved.
Well, another mining contract that I was dealing with, I was advising a family that had a big fleet of mining equipment. The miner, they could do it for a cost that was probably 30% less than one of the big majors can, because they're a small, nimble, less overhead and all that sort of stuff. The mining company didn't select them, and the reason was, we believe you're too cheap. The contractor that got it went over what the mining company thought it was worth. So say the mining company thought it was $1 million contract. These guys went in at $750. The guys that got it went in at 1.2.
Yep.
So they've paid more for something they could have got less, the same everything, but because of the bureaucratic nature of this organisation, and it ticked the boxes that the third-party consultant had put together, right? So this mining company, and it's a fairly big mining company, is overpaying for a service that it shouldn't. And miners are normally cheap as shit.
But it's not
like they'll normally go for the best bang for buck. But a lot of these listed bureaucratic major companies now are quasi-government run.
Yeah. And it's not their money anyway. It's shareholders' money. And shareholders, as we said before, big super funds, foreign investors, nobody cares. Yeah. That's the bottom line. As long as the share price is going up, it doesn't matter that it could have gone up more because you can't measure that. I mean, if they want to do something about pricing, what is going on in the building industry? That's not a topic for today's show, but perhaps another show.
Yeah.
The building industry in Victoria, New South Wales, people are spending their hard-earned money, and you have a look at the condition of things. To be honest with you, there should be a royal inquiry, a royal commission. Oh, there really
100%, 100%. Yeah, I mean, having come from it, and not, if we're talking about the quality, that needs a royal commission. If we're talking about the cost, that needs a royal commission. If we're talking about the supply chain, that needs a royal commission. I remember I watched it in real time when I was still working in the industry, and I saw what COVID did in decimating the entire supply chain and all the contractors that you'd bring in, and just the effects of lockdown and what that did to the whole supply chain, destroying generational creation and industry of supply chain. It was just nuts. And I was like, how on earth is this legal, what you're doing in destroying this industry? And then they complain, there's no supply. It's like, I wonder freaking why,
Somebody will need to explain this to me, though. It's the first time I was able to travel to New Zealand, when New Zealand opened its borders to Australians, and you had to have like 370 vaccinations. So I get across to New Zealand, I'm in Wellington, 18 eggs, $30. I actually had to get my art. I was like, no, can you just go back? Like, I'm sure I must have misread. And she's like, no, what did you say? I said, it said 18 eggs, $30. And she goes, yeah.
New Zealand dollars, right?
New Zealand dollars, yeah, but that was like $27 for us.
Right.
And I'm like,
what do you mean? It's like $6.50.
And I was like, you can't be serious. So then I go into Countdown, which is Woolworths. It's the same company. And I'm looking at the cheese. And they've got actually some quite nice cheese from New Zealand that I'll admit that I actually buy here in Australia, right?
New Zealand dairy products can be.
That was pretty good, pretty good cheese. Yeah. And I was like, this is. I bought one of these at Coles or Woolies, for $5, and it was 11. I'm like, supply chain problems from where to where? Supply chain from Wellington to Wellington? What supply chain issues? What are you talking about?
Well, there's like I was over, I can't remember where it was, somewhere on the South Island. I was over, it was a 2-day trip over and back. And we always go to this one place, and I must admit this does sound disgusting, but it's oyster pie. Right? The Kiwis love their oysters. Right? And I thought that this was going to be one of the most disgusting things in the world. And it was great. And on one of my first trips, we got one for, I don't know, say it was $4. On this trip, it's like $9. I'm thinking, hang on a minute, the oysters come from there. Yeah. The pastry and all that comes from, and it's gone up over, double. And in it was only like an 8-month period or something like that. And I'm thinking, this is just ridiculous.
One of the problems for small business owners, somebody who owned their own little cafe and stuff, who did want to keep their prices low, was that their cost of living themselves had gone up. So what could they do? Again, this is government. But the thing is that now, what supply chain issues do we have now? And a lot of this supply chain stuff is just crap. I get a lot of car services, especially when I'm going to the airport or stuff like that, or I'm going to the city. And I remember when we were first able to start travelling again, and there'd always be problems trying to get car services. Yeah. Anyway, a heap of the drivers gave me their own personal numbers. And I was like, so you guys are flat out. They're like, what are you talking about? We've been just parked up at home waiting, hoping for a job because all the major car companies aren't giving them the jobs to create this artificial thing. Again, it's just the everyday person is just getting squeezed and hammered all day, every day, in every direction. And that's what's so frustrating about it. And then rather than being homicidal, which is the word that you've used, unfortunately, I just said, what, to hell with it, I'm going.
And I've been around for 2 seconds. I can't imagine the people that, even older than you guys. I mean, in the 60s and 70s, the guys that actually built the place, funded the place, and paid taxes forever. I mean, how are they not flipping tables like Jesus style and getting, making a whip for themselves, and being like, get these people out of here. It's just nuts.
Well, I could partially answer that, though. During COVID, people were unhappy about being forced to take a vaccine. And a lot of people that I knew said, look, I don't have a problem with vaccinations in general. I just have some concerns about this one. And look at the brutal treatment that they received at the hands of the police, and especially Victoria and somewhat in New South Wales. So that wasn't actually, in my opinion, that wasn't about the vaccine at all. That was government saying, you mess with us, look, we've got all the power in the world and you don't have any rights. We can do whatever we want.
And the thing that really astounded me about that is everyone's whinging Dan Andrews is a blah, 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 dickhead. And then they vote him back in.
Yeah,
but, hang on a minute.
Anastasia Palaszczuk, you guys voted her back in too.
Hang on.
The LNP weren't that good.
Look, I think I'd vote for anyone but her.
But regarding the Victorians, I mean, we can that's a low-hanging fruit for that. When the Voice came around, they clearly voted no.
Yes, they did.
Because there was a clear definition between the opposition and the actual proposition being put forward. And the problem was with the Victorian election. I have to say this because I don't want the Victorians to be demoralised. They're about to go into a local election right now. Your vote still counts. It counted in the referendum. The problem in the state election was you didn't have Liberals that were Liberals. You didn't have like the Alex Antics of the world from South Australia or the Nick Goyrans of the world like in WA. And to make matters worse, the minor parties, there were 9 of them. And they basically had the same values. And they were all fighting over 15% of the vote. But whereas when you had a clear proposal, yes or no on a proposal that Anthony Albanese was putting forward, it was like, no worries, you guys voted 55% no. And that's the importance of that. So you still have your vote, but I'm sorry, I have to play the morale game.
But we were talking about this before the show.
Yeah, we were too.
That if you really want your vote to count, start defunding the majors. Right? Totally start defunding the majors. And your vote is worth money. And the major parties rely on this money to keep their machine going. They take loans out against it. Right? They actually go out and get loans saying that our primary vote's going to be this. At some point in time, those loans are going to stop because the primary vote's dropping. So let's drop their primary vote way, way down and then put the money in the hands of people that really want to make a change. There's a voting strategy out there that we can do that will solve a lot of this problem. We'll get rid of a lot of this gender stuff, get rid of a lot of the thing, because the majors will start going, hang on, I've got to be careful here because I'm not going to get my money and it's going to make it hard and we've actually got to blah, 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 blah. Then So if you vote for your Freedom Party, right? Of course, it'll flow to a major eventually, right? But if you get your major party that you want to vote for, your Freedom Party, over 4% of the vote, they will get the money, not the majors.
That's right.
Right? So that's going to make it a more level playing field, right, for all the minor parties to get together. Now, minor party people out there, stop being fucking stupid and start working together and merging.
Amen.
Right? Start getting out and driving a strategy. Run people in 152 fucking federal seats. Get out there and play politics the way the majors do. Stop being fucking idiots. Right? Rant over.
I can't talk like that. And that's the thing. I can't talk like that because, you know, I'm young, up-and-coming guy. It's just arrogance. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Thank you.
He's an old has-been.
No, but you know,
I'm an old has-been, mate. I've been in the political world for ages.
Wisdom and respect, you know, and this is the problem, you know. I see so many people, I rub shoulders with these candidates, with these volunteers, with these voters in our community, and they're saying the same things. So thank you for articulating that, because it's frustrating, because it's like these minor parties, and you guys have seen the policy matrix. You got a sea of green for all the yes things that they agree on with regards to the minor right parties, the freedom parties. They all agree on the same policies if you break it down, whereas they've got a sea of red, all these things that they don't agree on with the majors, yet they're split. So they're double handling. They're double handling at the same booths. You've got UAP people against libertarians, against One Nation people, rather than working together synergetically. And that's why, I mean, you guys should be members of parties. I'm not a member of parties, so I can be neutral, so I can help mobilise them and bring them together. But it's a great point. They need to work together. They need to defund the majors.
Politics is war, right? If you look at it, politics is war. There is strategy, right, that you need to do, and you've got an objective, right? Get over the hill and win. None of the minor parties are actually playing to win. They're playing to get elected, and that's a different story. You've got to play to win.
Because then they do have some power when they need crossbench support.
Yeah, but you've got stuff all power. Having one senator, yeah, okay, that's good. Having 10 people in the lower house, that's way better.
Power.
That's power.
Yeah.
Right? Now, minor party presidents out there, listen up. Stop focusing on the fucking Senate and start focusing on councils. Councils are where the power is. The Greens are killing us in the councils. They're taking over, right? They're putting shit policies in place. They're getting name ID and recognition, and then they are working up the ladder and becoming state MPs, federal MPs, senators. Start playing at the council level.
100%. And you know what?
At all levels.
100%.
All levels.
And the Libertarians, they've been doing that at a local level. They've gotten something like 9 to 15 elected in New South Wales. But
I fear, though, when the Liberals get their shit together, and by fuck, they really fucked up this time, right? And everyone in the Liberal Party should resign immediately at the council, like the federal, the executive level, because that was just bullshit.
Yeah.
The problem there is voters will go back to what they know. So what we need is actually don't resign in New South Wales. Stay there for the next council election and fuck that up as well, because then the Libertarians will be entrenched. The problem is at the next election, the Libertarians will lose again unless they really, really get their name IDs up.
Exactly, and that means they need to learn from the Greens. They need to learn from, you know, in the UK, and this is the approach. This is the gold standard from Mr. Nigel Farage, Mr. Brexit. He's the Trump of the UK. He just finished over the weekend his conference. This isn't a part of our topic for the day, but he was showing that, okay, we've signed up 80,000 members. In fact, on the day of the conference, he signed up another 2,000.
4,000 in 17 hours they signed up.
It's nuts. It's the second most they've gotten.
Yep.
They have established 260 party branches, local groups that meet regularly, that have a proper structure. They've set up in just 2 months, by the way. They're preparing for local elections in May 2025 because they understand they got more votes than the Liberal Democrat Party over there. In the UK, the Liberal Democrats, they're sort of like the Greens. They're way left-wing. They're not like our ones. And the Liberal Democrats got less votes than Nigel's party. Nigel got 4 million votes and only 5 MPs elected. They got less than 4 million, just under, and they got almost 100. like 90 MP, something crazy, because they know how to build a connection to their constituency.
Jeez.
They know, and that's what the Libertarians need to do now. They need to set up more branches. They need to build up more, demonstrate to your community, find local issues, find an unpopular development that everyone opposes and be the voice for people, or a road extension or whatever. And just, I'm not telling you to adopt values that aren't your own. I'm saying don't talk freedom, freedom, freedom. It's irrelevant to local council. Yeah. It's irrelevant. But you do have things like approvals, for example, at a council level that you can push. Focus on those things. Grow the pie of voters. But look, I've got to get you back again soon to specifically talk on that when you launch, which we won't go into.
We won't go into, yeah.
But when you launch what you launch. But Nigel is setting the gold standard of this, and the major parties over there are shaking in their boots. Yeah. And that's what needs to happen here.
Well, the quirks of the UK system, I think that was so unfair. The way that comes out, that they've got to fix that. But I will just say, I think I said this last time I was here, or I said it recently. One thing that I'll take away from that is that the world is not going as left as what I think many of us are worried about. Because you have a look at Australia, Albo got in with a third of the vote. You have a look at Keir Starmer. Okay, he was always going to win this. The Tories have been there for a long time, and they've absolutely screwed up and let a lot of people down. But the country didn't actually move that far to the left in that last election. And you'll notice that. So I think, again, I sort of come back to what is with the politicians, the political parties of our countries acting like they've got a mandate for things that they don't have a mandate for. Stop it. If you respect democracy, you respect the people that you're supposed to lead, stop it. And if you don't respect us, then get out.
Yeah.
Let somebody else go.
It was like we've mentioned this on the show already, that we're supposed to be governed by the majority. Stop governing for the minority. Right? This trying to ram through the voice, through the back door, through all sorts of other legislation and crap. Stop it. Yeah.
Well,
we didn't vote for it.
What they're doing now, after a resounding no from every state, ignore ACT for it, every state and territory has said no. And now state Labor parties are out there going, oh, okay, well, we'll just do it at the state level. Is there a part of no you didn't understand?
Yeah, I thought you believed in consent.
Yeah.
Well, but it's not just the Labor Party that behind treaty and truth and all that. It's the LNP. In Queensland, the LNP is saying that they're for truth. Here in New South Wales, they're for it. It's like, well, hang on a minute.
It makes me homicidal.
The majors are two sides of the one coin. Right, and
two cheeks of the same arm.
Yeah, two cheeks. But if you have a look at a coin has three sides, right? It doesn't have two; it has three. It has 1, 2, and then the edge, right? All of us that have a brain, right, and aren't fucking sheep and stupid, we sit on the edge, right? But the majority, all they see is the two sides, and they're identical. The Matrix. The turning point that you guys have put out.
Policy matrix, yeah.
I'm sitting there in the thing looking at it going, holy fuck, I knew it was close to how close they are. I think there's one thing between the Liberals and Labor.
Oh, I was horrified
like,
when
holy
I first...
fucking shit, that's not the party that I grew up in.
When Joel started showing me some of this stuff, I was horrified. But even if you go back to the great Labor leaders of the past, right, like Bob Hawke, for example, okay? I was a bit young when he was the Prime Minister, but okay, he has a good legacy. Now, you may not agree with everything he did. I know that people don't agree with some of the things that Gough Whitlam did. I don't think he should have been sacked, but it's a whole different story. But have a look at what he did when he wanted to change our anthem, right? And I'm so glad he did, because I think that it's offensive that the God Save the Queen, or now the King. That's not a national anthem. That's a prayer for one person. But I'll leave my republicanism aside for a minute. What did Bob Hawke do? He didn't just, I'll just sign it into the... They had a plebiscite or referendum.
Yep, they took it to the people.
Gave it to the people. So all this trans stuff, you want to have the national curriculum. During the plebiscite on gay marriage, a lot of these issues were brought up and everybody was silenced. No, we're only talking about marriage. We're only talking about marriage. We're not talking about changes to the school system. We're not talking about changes to religious blah, blah. And then what do? Bang, they passed it immediately. It was the second thing they passed in Parliament that day, would change the school system from memory, right? So if you're going to do that, if you want to have it taught in schools that gender doesn't exist and you can change them and all that sort of stuff, have the decency to ask Australians first. Have a referendum on it first. if you think that Australians actually secretly support the massive increase in migration to this country, ask them, right? Like Switzerland does, with a more direct democracy.
Yeah.
One thing I'd love to actually see is when you go to vote, and you actually have the policies, so you can say yes or no to each.
Same as like they do in the US. You know, you vote on article,
great.
whatever.
There's like 10 of them, 10 different direct democracy sort of.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to start maybe asking for, especially because, okay, I'm a republic. I think that we will become a republic at some point. But
of course
prior to that happening, I think we, the people, need to start demanding reform to the political process so that what the people want is actually respected by the politicians.
Yeah. Citizen-initiated referendums, if you guys want the official term. I think it's great.
I think we should do that. Recall elections.
Yeah,
I think we should have the ability to do a recall election. If
Albo would be gone, and this comment will be censored for future.
Oh mate, I'm gone. I'm gone.
Podcast is gone.
You're going to find me. They're going to grab me, lock me up, and they'll put me on a small island in the middle of the Atlantic or something. You know, get rid of him off the air.
Yeah.
Because what we need is the people to take back control. But our current government structure doesn't allow it. Right. Our politicians really don't listen.
Yeah.
Like they say they listen, but they don't. They're doing it to get re-elected. Like there's how many politicians would be in Parliament, and I haven't done the numbers for a while, that, you know, they're on, what, a $250,000 a year gig, 250 with all the
300.
Or 300.
Yeah, depending on the amount of committees. And
committees and stuff they're on.
400,
yeah. But if they were to go back into into private life, they'd be on, what, 70 grand a year? No one would give a shit that they existed.
Useless.
Well,
you know, they'd probably be the ones living in the tents.
Just to clarify, when they do go back into private life, right, they end up in high-paying jobs. But why? Because of their political contacts.
Well, true.
Right?
True.
So
they
it's not
milk the
about
system.
Exactly. It's not about raw talent.
That's right.
Not at all.
Scott Morrison, for his acumen in the defence industry,
Yeah.
you know, he gets set up with an organisation, a company that he set up with AUKUS. I mean,
Christopher
you can at least hide it, you know.
Christopher Pine went to a thing, and good old defence, and good old Bob Carr. Again, correct me if I'm wrong here, right? But didn't he end up on a $500,000 a year job working for the same company that built the M5?
Yeah.
I was at high school
they all
when that
end up
happened.
with directorships.
Oh, just he was getting something like $50,000 a month, and all he had to do was go to one meeting every month, like 12 meetings a year, and he actually missed a few, but he was still getting his $50,000 a month.
Yeah, some Hunter Biden stuff right there.
Oh, yeah.
Can I mention?
To be fair to Hunter, at least he got himself many millions of dollars. I mean, he did well.
Yeah.
But that's the other problem is, right, we talk about how corrupt the system is. Our politicians do it for a $4,000 electoral donation.
So
right?
cheap.
And we're way too cheap. At least in the US, they're doing it for $1 billion book deal or something. Right?
Land of opportunity.
Our guys are just, you're too cheap. Right.
Yeah, so they definitely sell themselves short.
Sure.
Guys, we mentioned the policy matrix a few times. I just wanted to briefly bring it up. If you could blow that up even bigger, because it's very detailed. We do these every election. Rami, if you could make it full size. It actually goes through 7 different categories, generally speaking: ethics, environment, and climate change, public health and well-being, education, economics, and reviving the economy, democracy. This is one we did for the New South Wales election. And when I say a sea of green, so we state the questions in a way that we agree with. So whoever says yes is generally in agree with me, with Turning Point Australia, with our principles as conservative, Christian, libertarian, as an entity. So you can see with those 4 freedom parties that ran, there's a sea of agreement. And that's where Stephen was rightly pointing out they ought to be together. But interestingly, it shows you that the Liberals are just another butt cheek on the same butt. And they're basically identical to Labor, except for maybe 2 policies. And that's the problem. That's why we do what we do, so that you guys have information in your hands. And when you scan that QR code at the election, which we will do for the federal election and the Queensland election coming up, it actually tells you who to vote for in your area that actually are of those values and are from those freedom parties and are people of conviction. And by the way, there are some good Liberals, of course, people like Antic and Rennick that were kicked out. But the point is, we take a scalpel to this issue. We try to solve that. We try to give you more information and transparency in the political process. But so that was what we're referring to.
Yeah, that is a fantastic thing. And people should be studying that sort of stuff all the time because it opens your eyes. Right? We all tend to know that the majors are pretty much similar. But then when you see it in graphic form like that, you go, holy shit, there is a big divide between the freedom parties and the majors.
And you know what's funny? I didn't even make it up. I literally, the way it works is we come up with the questions, we send it to all the parties that are running that are relevant to our audience. They send us the answers back. We cross-check it with their track record and manifesto, and then we put it in an easy form for people to see, and that's, it's very effective.
Because one of the things that really annoys me with a lot of our current politicians and senators of the major parties is they're all big talkers when they're on Sky News or on the ABC or wherever, but their voting record is 100% different. 100% different. And they don't put private members' bills in. Every member of parliament can put a private members' bill in, right? If you're against your party, put a private members' bill in and try and change it. Don't mouth, right? And they all mouth to get the sound bites. None of them actually do anything in parliament, right? So I've lost so much respect for so many of the so-called freedom fighters within our major parties that I turn them off now if I ever see them, even on Sky News. Like, you're just full of shit, mate.
Yeah, it's parasitic,
but
right?
I think it is good
parasitic.
that so many people, including people on the left, by the way. I don't know if there's a keep going in the same bullshit direction, Australia.
Instead
of turning point in Australia. But even they are frustrated with government.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
So
that's all I'm going to use to keep going. Yeah, I think it's called Toilet Paper Australia.
Something like that. But yeah, I was thinking, I've always said this for a few years now, it'd be lovely to see them have their policies out like they did in the referendum, the yes campaign, the no campaign. But if they did that, it'd be like the Labor Party says this, the Liberal Party, we agree. Yeah. That's what you'd end up with if you try to ask them what the differences are between their policies.
And we alluded to that with the misinfo bill. It's like, you got the Greens saying you got to go harder, and then you got the, I actually have more agreement with the Greens, actually, now that I look at it. Compared to the Liberal Party.
I always knew you were a turncoat.
Hey, you know what?
What's a turncoat?
But you know what? I know that they believe what they're saying.
Yeah.
I trust them in that. They're authentically idiotic, and that's okay. Yeah. You can do that in a free country, but don't lie to me.
If you have a look at politics, and there's pretty much only really 20 countries in the world that are doing this cultural wars stuff. Everyone else, and mind you, that's only about 1 billion people out of 8.5 billion people, right? The other 7.5 billion people are going there. You're a bunch of fucking morons. I'm just going to make money and keep going, and their countries. And if you have a look, people, their countries are doing very well. If
you want real freedom, you go to the former Soviet countries of Europe. Georgia's
Estonia,
5,000% growth in Georgia.
Romania.
You go to these countries because their governments, not only would they not do it, they would deliberately, specifically not do some of the things because they know what they just came from. They hate that sort of stuff.
That's right.
And we sit here in the West and we go, look, we defeated socialism and communism, right? So now what we need is more socialism and communism.
And if you have a look at the political so take the UK, right? The Tories and Labor in the UK are both left parties. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are both Democrats. Donald Trump is a Democrat, people. Look at everyone that he's aligning with. RFK, Democrat. Tulsi Gabbard, Democrat.
Tulsi.
What's the other fool he's just put with him?
There's three of them.
There's three of them.
Vivek.
Vivek.
They're all Democrats, right? So you got this slide in our political stuff. Then you have a look at Australia, the Liberals and Labor, basically both left parties. Now you have a look in New Zealand, right?
Start on bloody New Zealand,
right? The both major parties are basically left. Of where tradition is. Australia, the Western nations do best when we are centre right,
but
not left.
But just to come back to Trump, though, for a minute, though, because I think that what's actually happening is that the so-called left parties have gone so far left, too have the right parties.
Yeah.
But what's happened is that the left parties talk about it, right? And everyone else is like, wait, you want to put our children on puberty blockers? Huh? So the right parties don't. What's happening in reality, they don't do what they say. But you're right. You're seeing a lot of people who I think are frustrated, so they talk about it. We just need to change the system.
Yeah.
Right.
But the problem is we don't have a major party problem in any of the Western world. We have a fuckwit voter problem, right? Us. Because we keep showing up at the ballot box and voting for the same idiots. Change your mind, right? Literally change your mind. Do something different. Was it Albert Einstein said doing the same thing over and over again is insanity?
Definition, yeah.
Definitely. That's what we've got. We've got a voter base that are insane.
No.
Yeah, but if you are going to take the minor parties, which I've been doing the last handful of elections, I do think that you need to put your preferences for one of those two majors because it's eventually going to go to the
Oh,
minor.
you've got to.
So you have to do that.
Yeah,
You've got to.
And unfortunately, what choice
incrementally
do
do
you
it.
have? You kind of have to go with the so-called centre-right.
But defund them on the way through.
That's
Exactly.
right. Yeah, that's
Defund the majors on the way through and make them change.
yeah. Yeah.
Because money rules, right? What did they say? Money talks and bullshit walks. That's exactly what we've got in politics. And by defunding them, us, instead of being idiot voters and fuckwit voters, and I'll put my hand up, I was for a long time, you know, I was a sheep. You know, I went and, you know.
Like you were in New Zealand for a bit, were you?
Yeah, I was in New Zealand, Marty. And that, but we've got to change. I you know, hallelujah, found the light, and
I found the bloody light. I went overseas and took away
100%.
the tax revenue that they would have taken off me.
Yep.
Right? Hit them right where it bloody hurts, mate.
Yeah.
I don't live here anymore. I'm still a citizen. I'm not a resident here. I spend as much time as I can overseas.
Yeah.
And you know what? I could live in cheaper countries than the ones that I do, but cheaper as in I could keep more of my money. But I am happy to pay taxes to those countries that have helped me get ahead.
Yeah. And
That's the point, right?
Alluding what we were talking about before, I spent, after I got out of the Navy, I spent a big chunk of time travelling around the world, working around the world. And I've now, it was a couple of mentors of mine said, well, instead of whinging about it, you know, pull your finger out of your ass and actually start doing it. So I'm coming back to Australia to fight.
God bless you.
You know, fight.
No, and thank you.
know,
And because
yeah.
and that's not the selfish thing to do. You know, there's a lot of young people. We appreciate that when we hear that because it's like, yeah, look, you know, we know it's so sad. You know, I go to places, you know, around Australia. I go to the different cities. I go to Melbourne. I go see, you know, and I don't get it. I'm like, why is there this fascination with the Melbourne nightlife and culture? I don't see it. I just know lockdown Melbourne.
Yep.
You know, Sydney and Brisbane. And I'm like, I don't see it. I see, you know, old, decrepit, rundown places. They're never full. You know, you go to Sydney Harbour, for example. You go to Pontoon. The place has been around for like 50, 100 years or something. And it's like, it's dead. What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. So it's such a shame because people like me, relatively young, you know, in 1997, I was born. So it's like,
Holy shit.
Yeah, I'm
I'd
a
finished
baby.
my first career by then.
Exactly, and that's the point. You guys came up at it. You know what can be done when you get the F-wits out of government, when you've got people that actually manage it relatively well.
They're fuckwits.
Well, you know, but Sydney was so much cooler back. I mean, look at Sydney now. I mean, it's dead.
Oh, shit. I can remember when I was in the Navy, going up the cross as a young kid, right? And, you know, getting at the cross was fun. It was dangerous as shit. Don't get me wrong. It was dangerous as shit. But fun. There is no fun anymore.
No, there's nothing in it.
Because you can't smoke inside, right? I'm not a smoker, drinker, and that. I have been in the past. Like, I used to smoke and drink and carry on.
Let's just say I am one, and government, leave me alone, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm 40. If I want to smoke, I'll smoke.
But our clubs and pubs are suffering because you can't have a smoke, right? You can't have a drink. And look, the people that want to go to those places, we want three things: smoke, drink, and a punt. And the government's trying to fucking shut all three down.
Yeah, but
Stop it.
So they've just done
don't
this
want to
in the
fully
UK.
colour it. They don't want to fully
Look
colour
at
it.
what they're doing in the UK.
They've done this in the UK.
Yeah.
You got these stupid rules here, like you can smoke there, but you can't drink. You can drink here, but you can't smoke. You can't do both at the same time. I was just at a club a couple of days ago, right? I'm sitting there, and I said, "Oh, look, you know, we'll grab some nuggets or just something to you know snack on while we're, you know." And there's a sign there: "No food permitted in this area." I'm like, "Look, government, I get it that you don't want me smoking in an eating area, do not tell me that I'm not allowed to eat in a smoking area. If I choose to eat in a smoking area, why do I need you, government, to come over and go, oh, no, you shouldn't do that?
Yeah.
Right?
But it's personal choice.
Isn't it?
It should be our choice to fuck up our lives.
No.
Yeah.
100%. If I want to fuck up my life, right, let me do it.
Yeah, at least then I've got the pleasure of fucking up my life, not having you government do it for
Exactly.
me.
Yeah.
Right? You've already taken away all my other choices.
And that's what percolates all of this, right? Yeah. It's the big brothers watching, big sisters watching. You can't do this. They're like parenting you and being paternal. Like, oh no, you can't do that. Give me those cigarettes. Give me this. Give me that. If I truly believe that if it's a bad thing, the person, it's like survival of the fittest. Okay, like it is what it is.
But the problem is, Albo wouldn't have created 1 million jobs. Because they're all in government departments.
And that's the point. It's not enough to close it down. It's just enough to tax it and suppress it and make it annoying.
There's a bit of vice in order to have things right? Virtuous. You've got to have a bit of vice. Let people have them. How boring would life be without it? Right?
Doesn't tobacco increases testosterone as well?
Yeah.
There you go.
Does it?
Yeah. So, so one of the things that you can do is those nicotine patches.
Yeah.
That's
I've got one on.
yeah. And the gum apparently. From go and research this, people. I haven't done the full research on it. Yeah. I'll end up in Bayswater jail or something. Guantanamo, yeah. But apparently the nicotine acts with the receptors and increases testosterone flow and that sort of stuff. They're trying to make us all cheerless, right? And it's just absolutely.
Are you allowed to smoke in this building? I'm just gonna hit a test.
Get a testosterone.
Next time I smoke, look, it's for me bloody health, mate.
Yeah.
It's for my testosterone. He needs it.
He's turning into a chick. Look, pink shirt.
Look at him freaking. You're confident in your masculinity when you got a pink shirt on.
See, I could wear pink before it was before all the wokesters started it. So
Exactly.
I'm not stopping now.
Now you're like, I'm a man now. Anything.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? On the very first podcast we had here, I was shocked to find that young people have started this trend where they're bringing back the mullet because they don't want to be seen as gay.
Oh,
So it's swung.
That's the reason why they're doing it. I've noticed a lot of mullets.
I didn't know that. I thought they were idiots. I was like, well, I'm staying away from that guy. And then when he explained it, I was like, you know what? I can get behind that.
100%.
Because everything's
I
so
can't,
gay.
But even when I sit down and
I
talk
get
to
it,
this next generation as well, like the what are Gen Alphas or whatever they are now coming through school, they can't stand this shit.
No.
and this is
Can't stand it.
and I'm hoping that these people are going to be our saviour.
Gen Z,
Yeah, because you
Well,
talk.
the millennials are fucked up.
Oh,
I
millennials are
don't
fucked.
understand, right? Because I'm either the oldest of the youngest of the Gen X's, or I'm the oldest of the millennials. So the kids growing up were parented by my generation, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, what? Huh? I grew up at the same time as you. I went to the same schools as you. What are you doing?
What year were you born?
There's a micro.
It was pre-90. It was pre-1980, right?
No, that's why there's a cusp. There's like a micro generation.
It's not 1981 onwards, right?
Yeah, I was born in '83.
Right, 83. So you're Gen Y. I mean, that's millennials.
Gen Y, millennials.
Yeah, same thing.
But as I said, there's a micro between the two.
Is there?
Yeah.
So the oldest of us, the oldest of the millennials,
every generation actually overlaps.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
okay.
one before,
I
so
thought it was just 20 years. I mean, from 96.
They
There's
do
a
that for
6 year
statistics.
for every single generation. That there's like a 6-year
Yeah.
thing. So from 77 to 83.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm much different to the kids born in 84.
No.
Right.
What I'm saying is that the younger millennials, the ones that were 5 or 10 years
Mm.
after us, well, I've got
The ones in the middle band,
yeah.
like right in the middle of each band.
Yeah.
So it's Gen Z coming from up now. So I was the first year of it, 97 to 2010. So they're the ones going through, coming out of school now. They're in high school still, some of them, and they're just like, the frick is this?
and so
they're picking up the rosary
it's
beads.
The generation behind them that are going to have I personally think going to have the biggest impact.
Right.
Right, because they're going to really grow up with all this sort of stuff and say, "Fuck, you guys fucked up this place."
And that's what's
when
funny,
when
in
we
politics.
start talking about removing the breast buds off like 14, 15-year-old kids, putting the boys on puberty blockers, which can cause them to be infertile and weakens the boys and the girls' bone density and all that sort of stuff. I think that 20, 30 years from now, they'll look back at this time and go, "What the hell were you thinking?"
Yeah.
A bit like lobotomies, right? there was that scandal about these lobotomies being done, and then everyone went, what the hell were you guys thinking? I think this will be the same sort of thing.
You're in violation of the misinformation bill. You know, the sexual orientation, gender identity, all that stuff. Just by the way, intersex.
I want to make sure I violate everything.
I think you have.
Yeah, you know, I
think you did a good job.
I think I can. Oh, what have I got there? Damage to critical infrastructure. wait until I get on the road on the way home this afternoon.
Intentionally
Disrupt emergency services. Yeah, I'll tell a cop to fuck off. Yeah, like, I reckon I could cover all that.
Yeah, I reckon.
And go back, significant and far-reaching consequences.
Yeah.
In Australian, like...
Who defines that?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a great question. And there's a lot of questions around this.
Severe consequences for an individual in Australia.
Yeah,
but the problem is when this passes, right, this is going to go to a bureaucrat to create a set of regulations.
ACMA, yeah.
Right, so it'll go to ACMA. They'll go to create a set of regulations on this. But what makes them the arbiter for the world on these regulations?
No, but that's what they're going to do. That's what I'm saying. They're not going to do that, right? Because they know that if they do it, then you're going to come back at them and go, hey, like, what are you doing? What they're going to do is they're going to basically create a code of conduct and then apply it to these big media and big tech companies. Yeah. So then the big tech companies, when they start silencing you, you get upset at Google and Facebook and everything else, which you should. Yeah. But notice how they've started saying, look, you know, in the 2020 election, we maybe went a little bit too far, and with COVID, we went a little bit too far. But at the time, they were terrified that they wouldn't go far enough. And that's what you're going to end up with. You're going to end up with companies who the government says, well, here's a code of conduct we're going to apply to you. We're not going to directly take away freedom of speech from Australians. But if there's any misinformation, we're going to hold you responsible. So because it'll be vague, these companies are just going to go, ugh, and silence everything.
Exactly, and that's what that article mentions. If you actually read it it was actually very well written by Crikey. It says digital platform fact checkers can be skittish, and they tend to overreact, particularly when they have regulators peering down their necks and when political tensions are elevated. Mark Zuckerberg admitted as such in August. And that's the point. That's the problem with all of this. The government's trying to launder the radicalism of this legislation through the complexities of delegating that responsibility to ACMA. And ACMA is delegating that to these entities and these social media providers like Facebook and Meta, and they are delegating it to third-party fact checkers. And so in terms of responsibility, no one's taking responsibility.
Yeah.
So I know to get angry at because I read this crap, but the people out there, they don't know, and they can't put two and two, and that Albo's the reason why they can't, you know.
And I'm just a bit worried that maybe I have gone so far bloody left. Maybe I'm not the centre-right person I thought I was.
Well, we always
because Crikey and I have actually said the same bloody stuff. This is an
exception, mate. This is an exception.
This is a statistical anomaly.
I'm telling you, I'm
going to have to go to confessional or something.
When we were on that interview, Jatovi, when we were on that interview, I actually ended up finding out that there was a few articles that Crikey wrote about me years ago, and some of which are from it. Now, they wrote them terribly. They accused me, for example, of denying the fact that the Port Arthur massacre happened. And I was like, I wasn't even alive then. I don't know what happened.
So maybe they're confusing you with Alex Jones.
No. It was definitely. You'll see the thumbnail. It's my face. It says this guy, denies the blah 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 blah. It was crap. If you look at it, I actually say no. I'm not going to opine about this because I haven't even looked into it. I have no idea. It was before I was born. But the point is, that's who we're dealing with. So the idea that even they are saying no, this is going to censor us. We're not establishment either. It tells you something's wrong with this bill. And so in terms of the penalties, because it doesn't go into much detail, if you look at the explanatory memorandum, I've been talking to a few people around this, something like this, the Light Australian newspaper, 200,000 prints in 2 months. I'm the sole director. Now, it's 4,000 penalty points if we're in violation. If you think I'm going to abide by the misinformation bill, you've got another thing coming. Now, that is $313,000 fine. $313,000 fine. We're not rolling in cash the light. It's volunteer funded. I don't take anything out of it. It's volunteer funded, volunteer run, volunteers write in, but I will be the guy that they try to come past. But they're dealing with the wrong guy. I mean, I was threatened with jail time during COVID and I didn't budge. The point is, they will be doing that to the heads of these social media entities, to people like me at the light, and anyone else that has their own thing going online. And we have to oppose it. And as a reminder, If you want to add your name to our petition, head to tpaust.com.au to make your voice heard before September 30th when the submissions close. But gentlemen, did you have any other thoughts before we close up the show?
Well, I'll talk about the US real quick. If
do you want me to lead into that sure, with the polling?
But before we do, I just want to say, because Stephen obviously is former Navy. I just want to say, Stephen, well, it's more of a question actually. The age of the US fleet. The average age of the US fleet is 20 years old.
Yep.
The oldest existing, the oldest thing they've got is 50 years old or 54 years old or something from the 70s. They haven't had
active fleet.
Active fleet.
Yep.
They haven't had a skirmish, like a proper skirmish, since the Philippine thing in World War II, whatever it was. So, what are they doing right now to make their military really lethal, as they keep telling us? Male and female submariners now, the same submarine. That's a new policy.
Yeah, because it's just all the blokes changing their gender.
No. Biological females. Submariners have like a totally... They're different to everybody else because you're stuck in this little tube. It's just lunacy. How, like the things that they're trying to do. Why not just invest the 80 billion or whatever it was of military equipment that you left in Afghanistan? Maybe you could like get your fleet going. And I'm just very concerned about if that's the condition of our equipment and the ammunitions are getting older and China's obviously got new stuff. What are we doing here in Australia?
One of the biggest problems we've got here in Australia, and I was mentioning it before, is one, we don't buy local, right? We get tied into these big contracts with the big manufacturers overseas because we want, compatibility with our allies. Yeah, okay, we've got to have compatibility. But some of that equipment was designed here in Australia, right? And then it was sold to the Northrop Grummans and the bigwig, the Boeings and so forth of the world. We actually have to start looking in Australia and getting very nimble, right? Drones. We've got a lot of great drone technology here. Start doing it. The Army. We produce really good Army vehicles here, the Ocker and a couple of the other bits and pieces. What was the aircraft there was some aircraft that was designed and built here. Yeah. We do have shipbuilding capability, but it's to build one at a time. We should be building 100 at a time and selling it to other and exporting the technology.
We've got the minerals, we've got the skills, we've got the engineers.
There's a project around, and I won't name it, but it's a really good idea, and it links the iron ore and the coal that are basically on opposite sides of our country. So, and we have steel mills, and we create
Project Iron Boomerang.
Iron Boomerang.
Senator Malcolm Roberts explains the proposal if people want more detail.
Yeah. And look, I don't agree with putting the rail line across. I think we could actually establish all of that, and base the steel mill on the Whyalla steel factory.
Can I just explain for the benefit of the audience?
Yeah, please.
So what it actually Project Iron Boomerang is, and correct me where I'm wrong, what we do right now is idiotic. We mine the stuff up out of the ground to make steel, and that requires certain minerals. We send it overseas
to China.
China.
Is it to China?
China and India, Vietnam, outside of Australia.
They send it back to us. Yep. We buy it off them.
We buy it off them.
And then we use it for our construction and everything. Why don't we do it here? Saves the cost, save the environment, save the birds.
Because they'll say that it's damaging to the environment as if doing it somewhere else is cheaper.
Yeah.
So I was in a particular African country last year, and I was doing a talk to young, hopeful entrepreneurs, and they were saying, what can we do? And I said, you've got to look for the value add, right? I said, you guys have got avocados that are just, rotting by the side of the road. We pay $5 for an avocado in the shops. I said, but if you actually cut and slice that avocado and prepare something with it, your value add, people will pay $15 for that one avocado. Exactly. You're just letting it rot on the side of the road. I never thought I'd have to say that to a Western country. Like, like the value add, you just give them the raw materials, get them to do it, then buy it back off them.
And that's what we should be doing here in Australia. So take the coal, take the iron ore, take it to Whyalla, where there's a steel mill, build 10 other steel mills beside it.
On these train lines, right? Is that
well, Iron Boomerang is a train. Right. I think, why don't we just use ships? Right. We send the ships that way now. Send the ships that way.
Right.
Right? So we used all the infrastructure and everything we've currently got, and we could pretty much start doing it tomorrow.
Yep.
Right? Tomorrow. It's just the will of the government and some private enterprise to back it. Right?
Well, private enterprise will do it, right? Private enterprise will do it, but you need to get government out of the way.
Yeah.
Right? And if Australian private enterprise doesn't want to do it, it's only because they're too big, you get investors, you get people say, okay, bang, let's do it. Right?
Because the other one is, the other one is our refining capacity. Australia at any one point in time has anywhere between 3 and 7 days, I would say. That the official thing is 30 days worth of fuel, right? But we don't. I reckon we've got between 3 and 7 days at any one point in time. Majority of it comes in from Singapore, refined product. We've got 2 refineries, I think, left in Australia now, and we're probably...
What's that, Kwinana and...
And Kwinana's closing, and then there's one in Victoria, I think.
Right.
We used to have like 10 of them. I think there's one in Lytton in Brisbane. So everyone goes, oh, the oil price is affecting our fuel. No. What's affecting our fuel price is the traded commodity of gasoline on the open market because we buy it out of Singapore. That's what changes, not the oil price. But we need to be building more refining capacity here, more storage capacity here, and looking at better things to use around the place. Yeah. China and India at the moment, they're buying our good coal, right, to put in their power stations. They're taking their shit brown coal, they're gasifying it and turning it into the liquid, say, methanols, ammonia, that are used to create all the plastics, right? So what they're doing is they're upcycling their shit product and buying our good product to keep their thing. Why don't we do the same thing? We have more coal here than you can poke a fucking lefty's dick at.
Yeah.
Right. We have shitloads of it.
Yeah.
Right. And let's start gasifying it. Right. And I'll declare I'm looking at this technology right now. Right. And if we actually turn that into an upcycled product, we could mix something like methanol with diesel, 50-50 mix, and it'll run in pretty much any diesel vehicle now, reduces our reliance in the heavy fuel industry on imported diesel. And a lot of that imported diesel is coming from somewhere like Indonesia that is full of mould and other algae and stuff that stuffs up the fuel systems. Right, so let's get serious about Australia's thing. Now, if there is a war, and believe you me, the neocons in America and in Europe, right, want a war. They want a war.
There's big money in it.
There's huge money in it.
I'm not sure if I know you've just got here, you know that they've now sent American troops back into the Middle East.
Yes.
We'll come to that
there's 20,000, I think it's 20,000. Well, if they block the Malacca Strait and I think it's the Van Dien Strait, which is between Bali and the next island over, it means we get cut off from our fuel refinery, which is Singapore and southern Malaysia.
It's insane.
Right? That is insane.
Right.
We would run out of fuel.
How is this not a massive media story?
I know Malcolm Roberts was on about this at one stage. Yeah. Why isn't it the number one priority of the government to make sure that we have enough fuel to keep the trucks moving, to keep the cars moving, to keep the tractors going, to keep the revenue that keeps them going so they can do their stupid social issues? Without coal, without iron ore, without farming, you have no revenue.
The Malacca Strait between Malaysia and Indonesia?
Yeah, so Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore is right at the bottom of the peninsula.
So
there.
if you pull up this map, Rami, as a full screen, everyone watching, Malaysia being northwest of Australia, Malacca Strait being right in here. So we literally send right now all of our fuel. We get it here, right?
Yeah,
and
so it comes from Singapore.
It comes from Singapore.
And then it comes into basically Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and a lot of it comes into Perth.
Right.
There's a heap of it comes. So it comes from Singapore, which is right down the bottom, there.
Yep.
right, and then it sails down,
right.
basically through where barley is.
Java Sea.
Yeah, Java Sea, through
Along.
barley, and then down this way.
Right.
And
all over Australia.
Yeah, and then to whatever port it's got to go into Australia.
Right. And I think
this is refined product.
Yep.
This is refined product. This is not oil.
So hang on.
This is
Where does
refined
the
product.
oil come from? Is it from Australian?
We do have some oil in Australia.
They send it to Singapore,
Right.
To refine?
No, that goes in. Some of that goes into our refineries.
Right.
We do have a couple of small independent refineries that take the small quantities of oil that are coming out of Western Queensland,
Right.
And then they're refining it local. A great company and great Australian growing company, IOR, are doing that and expanding well.
Right.
Micro refineries and producing oil there.
Yep.
But a lot of our oil would come out of the Middle East or somewhere like that to go into our refineries. And it's probably Iranian oil that's been sold through Qatar or someone like that.
Yep.
Or Russian oil that's been mixed in the Mediterranean with oil out of Libya or somewhere, so it changes its signature. And then we put it through the last couple of refineries we got. But
Yep.
we could actually have... So the technology's moved. There's companies in the US that I know that make micro refineries. You know,
All right.
small, 5,000, 10,000 barrel a day refineries.
Yeah.
So we could strategically place more of these closer to where we use the fuel rather than trucking it and railing it long distances, and then we'd have capacity. We've got shitloads of land, people, to store oil. Right, we could store oil and, drill, baby, drill. Go Trump, drill, baby, drill.
Yep.
We could open up a lot of oil and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Northwest Shelf has still got stuff. There's stuff around. I think under Woomera, in the middle of South Australia, there's a huge oil field, but it's never been tapped. Right, and technology's come a long way since that was looked at. We can now drill deeper. We can go horizontal. We can do all sorts of weird and wonderful things, but we're just not doing it.
I want to close off the show, but I want to close with to that topic with a great clip from the late Jim Molan. Have you heard of Jim Molan before, Shakeel?
Gotta love Jim Molan.
I'm sorry. So I don't want to assume. Sometimes, people like I throw names around because I'm in the thick of it, and I talk to some people, and they're like, you guys have mentioned a few names. I'm like, I've got to Google this right now. Jim Molan, the late Jim Molan, he unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. He only got 7,000 views on this particular video from John Anderson. But any opportunity I get, I try to play this because, again, the purpose of the show isn't Joel has all the answers. It's Joel has a lot he's trying to amplify. But when it comes to the topic of crude oil and getting it out there, I really want to play this particular clip because what it shows is the fact that what's going on in Australia. I will cover the US politics at the end. We do have some polling to go through, but I did just want to cover this particular clip. So this is John Anderson, former Deputy Prime Minister John Anderson, who was the acting Prime Minister during 9/11, during the Howard years, but also this clip's from 2019. In terms of the stats, so they might be a bit out of date, but you get the gist of where things are at. And this is what was said.
Let's come though to, and I've been pretty tough, frankly, on the powers that be in relation to what's happened with submarines because I do see it, like a lot of people I meet, as clear evidence that we haven't been taking this stuff seriously enough. We've been pretending the world is still safe because the Americans run it and we don't have to worry. Yeah. And everything tells you that's changed, as you've outlined. But there's another example that horrifies me. I just cannot come to grips with the fact that we've let this happen. We no longer produce any crude in this country worth mentioning. Very little refining capacity. We're a totally energy-dependent country. And I know many people are heated about the energy debate, but the reality is we are utterly dependent now and in the foreseeable future, particularly on diesel, just to keep the economy going, to keep the grocery stores and the chemists and the economy flowing. We're meant to have 90 days of fuel reserves, as I understand it, and under the International Energy Agreement, if somebody gets into trouble, they can be helped by the others and so on and so forth. Correct. How did we get to a situation where the last time I looked, we had about 18 days of diesel and around 21 days of petrol? Yes. How did we get there?
Well, I think we are...
Why is it not up in lights? Why are Australians not saying the government that fixes this because it's so important to every Australian, regardless of your debates about all the other social issues that are around at the moment, is the one that gets my support.
Absolutely. And I've got to say, to the credit of Josh Frydenberg and Angus Taylor, both of them have moved into this area despite the fact that they were at the time running the biggest aspects of energy in this nation. The way we got into it is that we allowed the commercial requirements to drive us because we didn't have to do it. We didn't need lots of fuel in this country except for national emergencies and big harvests. We didn't need lots of fuel in this country because if someone closed down the sea lines of communications, our good friends the Americans could always open them. We go back to the tanker wars in the 80s up through the Gulf. Vast proportion of our fuel comes from the Gulf. It might go to China first, or to Japan first, or to South Korea first, get refined and be sent back to us, or to Singapore first.
Back in the 80s, we had a very high degree of self-sufficiency. People don't know that.
Yes, we had 7 refineries.
Our own. Yeah, and our own crude.
Yeah.
We were virtually 100% self-sufficient.
We're
now below 10,
right.
I think, now.
We import 90% of our product.
90%.
Yeah. So we produce 10%, but it's strange because yes, we produce 10%, but we export crude. We import and we also export some products. So the whole thing is purely run on a commercial basis. If say a refinery can find a good place to send its crude, it sends its crude and it doesn't refine it itself because you can buy much cheaper refined product from out of Singapore. And your figures are quite right. We only have roughly 21 days maximum of petrol, diesel and aviation fuel in this country. And that is brilliantly successful from a commercial point of view. It's not very successful from a national security point of view because all of our fuel comes by ship, comes through our harbours. And harbours can be closed very, very easily. We've spread the sources of those fuel, of that fuel supply over a large number of different countries and different sources to give us flexibility. But if you prevent the ships sailing to Australia, then we're in big trouble. Now, the innovation, I've been working on this now for about 9 months. The innovation in this country in relation to producing fuel from alternate sources is mind-boggling.
Oh, it is completely.
Biofuels and
gas to liquid.
Exactly, gas to liquid using the byproduct of our LPG, our LNG exports. But what we're lacking is a realisation that's a problem in the first instance. We're only starting to realise it's a problem. Secondly, we don't realise the risk that problem is presenting to us. And the Josh Frydenberg and Angus Taylor have both directed the department to conduct a review to express the problem, to express the possible solutions to the problem and the risks that doing this. Now, I'm not asking government to spend 1 cent more on this fuel. What I'm saying, though, is that government must realise the risk it's taking by not spending money on this fuel. We don't want to store fuel. The last thing we want to do is have billions of, have 12 months supply. What do we consume a million litres a day of petrol, of fuel. We don't want to store 365 million litres to give us a year's supply of fuel like the US has got, because that fuel doesn't last. You've got to manage that fuel. We don't want to get to that game. But we need to store more than we've got. We then need to look at how we can expand the refineries. So maybe add 10-20% onto each refinery, and maybe the government has to pay for that. We need to be able to localise it. If you can produce an organisation that uses biofuel near Albury somewhere, means we don't bloody have to put the fuel into a diesel truck and drive it out to Albury.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, there are a lot of options like that, but we haven't been doing it.
We haven't been doing it.
And can I tell you the disconcerting note for this, for me, in this, is I'm very glad to hear there are ministers now taking it seriously. But where were our officials on this one? Well, they must have known it was an issue because, I do pick things up. Yeah. Washington can't believe that we've been so irresponsible.
I know, but I guess I don't know why the answer was, but I kind of justify it myself by saying, well, we always knew the Americans would look after us. Well, those days have passed.
Well, Jim, thank you very much. This has been very, very interesting. I hope people will listen. It'll be very interesting to hear their reactions, and you're a public figure and I'm not hard to find, so they'll let us know.
They will.
But I just reiterate again that both of us absolutely abhor
And that was pretty much the clip. I was listening to it when I stepped out, but what's insane about the whole thing, the idea that we have no capability compared to what we used to have. You were right about the 10 refineries there. And we've got to build that up, We shouldn't have a 12-month supply, but we need to have the ability.
But you don't have to if you've got your own refining capability. You could keep 30 days worth of supply because you've got the ability to produce it.
Yeah, and that point you made about the diesel being taken up, and if there's a shortage, military needs that. Military needs that for the defence of the nation.
Aviation fuel. We need it for drones. We'll need it for aircraft. Well, actually, we won't need it for drones because we won't have any because we're fucking stupid. But what are we going to fly our planes on?
But this comes down to what I think we've been talking about is a lot of this culture war stuff. It really wasn't something that we were arguing about before. Like when I was growing up, coming out of high school, it's just like, yeah, okay, like whatever, you do you, I don't care, we all just get along. Now all of a sudden, men and women are at odds with each other. The LGBTQ community and everybody else is against each other. The Indigenous people are against, everybody else. The immigrants are against it. Like it's going crazy. And meanwhile, while we're focusing on all this bullshit, there's all this other stuff going on, which is destabilising our country.
Fundamentals.
It is causing it to be less competitive business-wise, less safe from a national security perspective. And somebody's making off with a lot of money and power somewhere along the line here. 100. It certainly isn't the everyday person.
Because one of the things, I was talking to an insurance guy the other day, because we're looking at a couple of big projects here in Australia, and we're trying to get sovereign risk insurance, because the funders out of Europe require sovereign risk, even on Australia.
I can arrange that.
And the two that we went to turned around and said, no, we don't deal in Australia anymore. There's too much sovereign risk. And I said, but you've just done an insurance product for Uganda. And they went, yeah, because we know how bad that is there. We know the risk. He said, the problem with Australia is we don't know what the next election's going to bring.
Well, I don't think
that was directly out.
I don't think that we have found the United States just yet, but the US has this issue as well, because every election where the parties change and the Senate changes, the midterm, there is a lot more added sovereign risk now from an investment perspective.
Europe's got a massive sovereign risk problem. And that sort of stuff. And the insurance companies now are starting to, the actuaries that we're talking about before with their big spreadsheets and their fancy calculators, they're all sitting there going, you know what? Bumfuck Africa is a safer bet for us. We could make a lot of friction on the insurance. And here's an interesting thing for you about insurance, right? What do you think an insurance company wants, right? To insure insure a fleet of ships and have one accident, or insure a fleet of ships and have 50 accidents?
50.
They want 50 because they want the rest of the shipping industry to take up insurance and higher grade insurance. So every time a law comes in, right, seatbelts, insurance companies fucking loved it because the unintended consequences of seatbelts, whiplash, right? So yes, it saved lives, but now it created friction in the insurance market and in the medical market. Airbags saves lives, all well and good, but creates friction, and so your insurance is going up. So with every decision that we make or a government makes, there's an unintended consequence. And the problem is with governments putting more and more and more and more laws in and more bits of paper in, and the US is a prime example of this. They pass legislation like a toilet paper factory produces fucking dunny roll. That has unintended consequences, which then leads to cost of living increases, which then leads to unaffordability issues, which then leads to investment not happening, which then leads to the situation we're in today. And until we absolutely stop this merry-go-round and cycle, and mind you, lobbying is becoming a very big industry in Australia. Massive. In America, it's actually legalised. I can't remember who, I think it was Clinton, passed the laws that basically made it legal.
Citizens United.
And
Citizens United, where they can form PACs And
Yeah. There was that,
unleashed the...
but basically you can't lobby I think it's you can't lobby a committee in the US unless you use a lobbyist.
Right.
So basically what it did is it entrenched lobbying in their political system.
Right.
Well, yeah, but you'd want to do that because of the amount of money that the lobbyists.
Well, it's all about money. They control billions and billions of dollars.
It's nuts.
Right. Oh, this election, and let's go into the Trump Kamala train wreck.
Democrat versus Democrat.
Yeah, Democrat versus Democrat. There should be a book on it. But if you have a look at it, the amount of money that's going to be spent this election cycle is fucking phenomenal.
Billions.
I'm just going to take slightly the other side of this. So Nancy Pelosi, her daughter, did this documentary. I think it was in 2016. It was one of the elections, and
No, that was Chelsea Clinton, wasn't it?
no, it was Nancy Pelosi's daughter.
Okay, because Chelsea Clinton's done one on Hillary as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, this thing where they actually went and spoke to be fair to I forget her name, but Pelosi's daughter. To be fair, I thought she did a reasonable job actually on this film, and she spoke to like super donors for both Republicans and Democrats, right?
Yeah.
And one of them said, "There's not enough money being spent on the elections."
Yes.
And I sat there and went, "Oh, hang on a minute." But his point was America spends, I'm just making the figures up, I can't remember. America spends, $50 billion on advertising, alcohol and sugar and this and that.
Yeah.
And they spend, $5 billion on the election. And I thought, yeah, that's a reasonable point, especially if politics is as important as everyone says it is. I'm not sure it is actually, because nothing changes. I think the politics only becomes important when there's going to be massive change on the table.
Yeah.
Right. Just in relation to Donald Trump very quickly and the Democrat versus Democrat thing, I always get a bit of a laugh when he calls other people rhinos because technically speaking, he's actually the rhino.
Yeah.
And they're all the old establishment Republicans that are leaving. But the debate, it's been a few weeks now.
Yeah, we finished that, didn't we?
I'm going to stick with the answer that I gave straight after the debate. I think Donald Trump won the debate, although I acknowledge that Kamala Harris won it. Now, let me tell you why. I think she performed pretty well, right? But this was her chance to be able to explain to the American people exactly what her policies actually were going to be and like what they were, and she didn't do it.
Oh, no, they are. She did. Trump bad.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
But her answers, and since then, she's given a couple of interviews and she's done the same sort of thing. So, okay, what's your plan for bringing down inflation? Well, I come from a middle-class family, so, right?
I did too.
So, it's this sort of thing that she's not answering. Now, personally, I don't think that's going to be persuasive enough. I don't think that people who are sitting at home are going to go, wow, yes, I'm definitely going to take Tuesday off work and go down and vote. I can't see that happening. So I'm going to renew what I said before. I think that he wins all the swing states, and I reckon he's going to flip Virginia. I've got no evidence to back that up, right?
Yeah.
But I think he's going to flip Virginia and New Hampshire. Now, Mark Robinson, my friends in North Carolina, tell me that Mark Robinson, God bless his heart, has royally screwed up over there, and the Republicans are in for an absolute smackdown at the governor's race. I'm not even 100% sure about that, to be honest with you. I think that Mark Robinson might just be able to pull something out of his, pull something out there. But a lot of people are suggesting that North Carolina flips to the Democrats. That costs them the election, but I don't think so, because I think that Donald Trump still has the numbers in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, Michigan. I think he's got the numbers in Georgia. It's definitely got the numbers in Nevada. I think Arizona comes back to him. And you know what would be very, very interesting? This is where I said to you, can he get New York? I don't think so. Not really. Right. But it's a good strategy because he's out there, doing all these campaign events. And New York is the sort of the media hub of the United States. Is actually New York and not California. The thing about New York is that its media bleeds into the states that are right next to it. And so that's a really great, bang for your buck. I'll tell you this, that if Kamala Harris wins New York, well, if he flips New York, everything's over, right? Then he'll actually flip a whole heap of other states. But if she wins by less than, let's say, 7 points, then that would indicate right then and there that he's won the election. because then I think I'd be a lot more confident about Virginia. I'd even say if she wins it by 5 points or less in New York, New Jersey will probably flip.
Can I just explain to the less political diehards out there, the reason why you're using New York is it's on the east. It's the first where the polling closes, along with a number of other states like Florida who are very efficient with their counting. So if it starts coming in for the eastern states, you can project. So if Trump flips it, then it's like, oh my God, well, what else has he flipped? He's probably flipped others.
It actually does.
Sorry.
So it does affect. So if he does very well in New York, New Jersey, some of those sort of heavy Democrat states. What happens in places like New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona, the Republicans go, oh, fuck, we've got a chance, we're going to make sure that we do our part. So it can help. California, I think we're going to see some interesting stuff in California. What you've got to remember is in New York and California, a lot of Democrats have moved, right? And they've moved to Texas, they've moved to Florida, they've moved to New Mexico. But some of the Republicans, the diehard Republicans who are lower down in the socio-economic area, haven't moved. So the ratios, and this is more for House seats than it is, and other bills than it is for the overall state. The overall state, put it this way, if California ever become Republican again, I'll dance naked in Georgia Street.
I told you when we first met that I predict that California would go would flip red within 20 to 30 years. And that was 15 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So I've got 15 years left.
But not at this election. It won't at this election.
Not this election, probably not. But you know what? But Oregon might. It's very, very unlikely. But I'll tell you this, if he does win New York by some miracle, if he won New York, well, then I'd actually be prepared to say, look, Oregon, that could be in play.
And that's could, because it will buoy the Republican voters and the independent undecideds to go, you know what, let's jump on the bandwagon.
Also, California has just had the biggest, from memory, if again, somebody will fact check me, I'm sure, it's just had the biggest increase in Republican.
Yes, it has.
Right?
It has, yeah.
Now, I saw a video recently of Donald Trump going through New York. This is before he had the second assassination attempt, so before he had a full presidential detail. And there were people lined up on the street.
Well, the Democrats can't even shoot him.
So, they can't shoot anything.
Well, they can't shoot
anything. But the people were lined up on both sides. Now, you've been to New York. New Yorkers don't stop for anything.
No.
So for that many New Yorkers, I just feel like they could. And this was actually New York City too. It wasn't out in Long Island.
No.
So I could
the trials
see
have
New
helped
York
him in New York.
Yeah.
The trials have helped him in New York because a lot of New Yorkers, especially middle-class businesmen, are going, fuck, if they can get Donald, they can get me.
But that's the thing, right? So they've got, he's got middle management and senior management, entrepreneurs that are worried. He's also managed to increase his vote, especially amongst black men. And this is great because after 2020 we had BLM, defund the police, Now all of a sudden you got him saying, he hasn't quite said this, they should play it up more. Yes, I want there to be criminal justice reform because I can see how it can be abused. And we need to fund the police, but we also need to make sure that we reform the system. Yeah. Now what he's got blacks in America, they're like, actually, that could be our guy. So he's got black. He's increasing with every major group. He's increasing with Hispanics. He's increasing with everything. He got the Muslim guy from Minnesota, I believe. Yeah. Michigan or Minnesota? Minnesota, I think.
One of those two. I can't remember.
Who's thrown their support?
Probably Michigan.
Michigan.
Might be Michigan.
Yeah.
Because that's where mostly the Middle East and...
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's got them. Plus he's got Jewish support. Who does Kamala Harris have exactly on her side? I think that these polls are all just full of crap. And again, I said this before in 2020, and I was abysmally wrong. I don't think it's out of this world for him to win the popular vote.
I
really
think,
don't.
So this is my take is 2020, the Democrats with the billionaire money ran such a great mail-in ballot campaign that is where they got the numbers. Their ground game in 2020 for mail-in ballots basically blew everyone away because no one realised what they were doing, right? This time around, they realise But if there's really shit weather in the northeast, right, New York, New Hampshire, all up through there, mail-in ballots could come back into play again.
Well, the Republicans have run a strategy there, and you've actually seen that Trump has had an increase in the amount of people registering for mail-ins, and the Democrats have had a decrease, and especially in Pennsylvania.
In Pennsylvania, exactly.
It's like 400,000 person decrease. Yeah. That election was won with 150,000 votes or something, right?
80,000.
Sorry, right.
About 80,000.
Yep.
And that is going to be the big change. So I still think that Trump won the general election in 2020, but he lost the mail-in ballot election, right? This time I think it's going to be a lot closer, and it's going to come down who has the better ground game. Kamala Harris, from what I understand, doesn't have a good ground game because even her own party are still pissed off that they didn't get the vote for her. There is a lot of people that won't vote for her because she was installed.
Yeah. Where
Donald Trump has gone through the process 3 times now.
That's right.
Right? So the Republicans are 100%. Like the first time they weren't 100% behind him. The second time they were 90% behind him. This time they're 145% behind him.
You've got people that are becoming more and more anti-establishment as time goes on.
Yeah.
And you've got a man who, they've trawled through the laws that they've got. And you know what? The United States, you were talking about this before, the United States has got so many laws, rules and regulations on the books that the federal government can't even tell you how many laws they've got. They've lost count.
Wow.
But ignorance is not a defence. So you're supposed to know it, but they don't.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
That's astonishing.
So people are going to look at this and go, look, you've hammered him through this New York trial. You've hammered him through like the E. Jean Carroll or whatever. According to him, he'd never even met her before. Right? How are you supposed to prove that you didn't meet someone 30 years ago? I don't know. Right? The Stormy Daniels thing. Then you've got this thing down in Georgia where Fannie Willis is giving money to a boyfriend and this and that, and her daughter just got done recently. There's body cam footage of her daughter being done for drink driving or something like that, and who was there but her and that bloke?
Yeah.
Oh, it was just, it's ridiculous. So I think people are going to look at that and just go, look, enough's enough. And then you try to assassinate him twice. I mean,
with 5 squads out, 5 assassin squads as well.
I think I'd be inclined to vote for him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I was American, I wouldn't. Plus, I mean, look at the policies that she's got. First of all, no taps on tips. So that's a really good idea. I wonder if Trump had something like that.
Well,
sounds familiar.
I wonder.
Then you've got other plans like.
Taxing unrealised capital gains.
Let's tax unrealised capital gains at 25%, but only for people that are worth more than 100 million assets. Cool. So all those Californian tech startups, right, they're not going to be able to keep the asset because they don't have any money. They've got assets. So what are they going to do?
Liquefy.
They're going to have to sell it to foreign investors like me. I don't have 100 million, but I think we could get it for the right company, right? So like me, you... we don't have to pay their taxes because realised gains occur in your country, not in the country that you're operating in. This is insanity.
Farms.
Right?
No, like the amount of family farms that would breach 100 million in the US.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be staggering.
Now
she's basically going to shoot farmers.
Again, guys, this isn't cash in hand. This is your value of your asset. So you would have to liquefy it to pay a tax, basically. It's nuts.
And in order to liquefy it, nobody else is going to want it because they're going to be subject to the same thing, which is why foreign investors will end up with it. So when Donald Trump goes to Silicon Valley, who do they support? They support him, which is, it's only a matter of time before California says, right.
Eventually will, because it swings around a bit.
We've had enough. Now, on top of that ridiculousness, she's decided, well, look, we won't put our taxes on corporations back to 40%, which is where it used to be. What we'll do is we'll just do a moderate increase to 28%, which is Australia's rate. Why? Like, do you want to compete with the world or not? I mean, I know Australia and New Zealand don't care about competing. That's fine. We're idiots. But over there, you've got to compete with Europe. The tax rate in Europe is 20% pretty much across all the countries.
You've got to compete with Mexico.
Even Canada. Like, so what does she do? She goes, I'm going to put the tax up. Again, is this what people want? Maybe I'm out of touch. I don't know. But do people want government to be bigger, tax more, take more money out, and then spend it on bullshit?
If you have a look at where the culture wars are happening in the basically it's just 20 countries around the world, as we've said, and it's all about kill the middle class. Kill the middle class. So who is the middle class? The butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. It's the people that fucking feed you people, right? It's
Well,
you
they
know,
don't even exist anymore.
well, pretty much they're all
the
existing.
butchers at Woolworths centralised,
Yeah.
right? The baker's some big corporation.
But that's what I mean. They're getting rid of the people that give you good food. They're getting rid of the people that create community. School, private schools, homeschooling. You know, homeschooling's especially in America, it's one of the fastest growing segments of what do they call it? Home services.
If God ever blesses me with children, there's no way in hell I'm sending them to school. I can tell you right now.
Oh shit, no.
Right?
No. Well, I don't know if there's children out there. If there is any children out there, hi, you know.
Not anymore.
Go
Not
see
anymore.
Shaq.
Maybe the children are listening in more because they're swearing. I don't know. Maybe you're helping me break into a new market.
Yeah, we get all the kids going to school tomorrow.
That's it. That's
Yeah, I watched this Ark podcast and it said that we shouldn't go to school anymore.
Yeah,
Right? That's it. I'm staying home.
Look, Andrew Tate, listen, he swears a lot. I was going to say, before I forget, there was some polling from the New York Times published some polling. I don't know that they were the ones that did it. Siena polling, a poll basically did. They said Trump shows signs of strength in Sunbelt battlegrounds, poll finds. And this is for Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. So Trump leading Harris by 5 points in Arizona. That's one of the swing states in the last election, guys. Georgia as well, 45 to 49. Trump's ahead by 4 points. North Carolina, Trump's ahead by 2 points on 49 to Kamala Harris's 47. So these are states he needs.
Look, Mark Robinson could pull him down, and of course the research triangle in Raleigh. That has attracted people from other parts of the country, which has sort of made North Carolina more in play. I still think he'll prevail there, though, especially when you look at the other counties.
I will say that there is more, just to give people more context, it's not just one poll, because we should always take polls with a grain of salt.
You should always watch the trend, not the poll.
They've got some polling average to compare that with. So Trump up 5 in Arizona, he's up 4 in Georgia, and up 3 in North Carolina. The polling average, though, is Trump plus 2 in Arizona, Trump plus 2 in. So it's a little bit higher in this particular one I've mentioned than the other ones, and he's even in. So it's off by 2 to 3 points from the polling average.
Now, with the averages, there are some outliers sometimes, but here's the thing. If the averages show Kamala Harris up by 2 points, which I think is where she is nationally, sort of like a 2 or 3 point lead, that's a loss with the electoral college system.
Yeah.
That's a loss. And again,
Right.
if you start to see New York come back into the single digits, which I'm pretty confident it will. I'm very, very confident New York will be in a single digit lead for her. That is going to ultimately mean, if I'm correct about that, that's ultimately going to mean that the rest of the places are going to go to the right of New York.
Yeah.
And that really is problematic.
You're pretty confident that this New York...
Look, he's from New York. I don't think that he's as disliked as what people say. And you got to remember, you go back and watch him on The View. You go back and watch, Whoopi Goldberg and what's the name that's always unhappy that wet herself, whatever she said when he got
Joy
jailed.
Behar.
Joy Behar.
Oh, Joy
Right.
Joy Behar.
When he was on The View, they were like, and he was saying the same stuff. He was criticising government the same way as he has been since he was 30. And they disagreed with him. And he said, look, to Whoopi Goldberg and Joy, he said, look, I love you guys, but... And you know what? They came back and they said, we love you too. How does somebody who was revered by Democrats all the way up to 2015, then 2016, he decides to run. He decides to get rid of all of the establishment Republicans that they all said that they hated. And now, all of a sudden, they hate him. I don't buy it. And I also don't buy that Kamala Harris went from being the most unpopular VP in modern history to
The least voted
coronated
as well.
with 0 votes.
Yeah.
She gets coronated, and then all of a sudden she's a superstar?
Yeah.
What is a superstar about her? Drew Barrymore has recently said that when she did that ridiculous interview where she called her mumbler and this and that she was nervous about how to make her look good. The Oprah interview, the Dana Bash interview with CNN, the way the debate was conducted with ABC plus her interview. Do people love her all of a sudden? I'm just not buying it.
No.
Yeah.
No. Exactly.
Well, and the other thing is the Democrats have now become the party of war. They've become the party of big government. They've become the party of divisiveness. They've become everything that they used to say the Republicans were. Yeah. Big pharma, big tech, big everything is now the Democrats, right?
Yeah.
There is a lot of people in the Democrats that go, that's not us. We don't want that. That's not what we're about. So in some states, they will flip.
Look at
No,
the
sorry,
fact that the Teamsters have said we're not going to endorse you. The fact that Trump
they've come out and endorsed Trump.
Yeah, but the Teamsters didn't.
The Teamsters did, yeah.
Well, they have now, have they?
I'm nearly sure they did.
No, they didn't endorse her, but they couldn't endorse him either because for him to get the endorsement, he had to have universal support. For her to have it, it just needed to be a majority, unless things had changed this weekend. But
there was something.
There was another union that supported him.
Yeah.
So he's got unions. He's got so many things on his side. I do feel very, very confident, and especially now that there is troops being redeployed into the Middle East. I think that this is going to be a landslide.
Well, not just the Middle East. There's troops now being deployed into Ukraine.
Yeah, well,
US troops now on training missions or whatever.
British as well. I mean, I was going to say regarding the party of war, a lot of the Republican rhinos, they've gone there. A lot of the never Trumpers. You know, she was proud to declare. I don't know. We were confused a couple of weeks ago that Dick Cheney, Mitt Romney, 200 rhino Republicans have endorsed Kamala, and it's like they're not Republicans. They're not.
Well, Liz Cheney. Look at Liz Cheney. Why is she still in the party?
Don't get me started about this.
There's one union that endorsed Kamala.
Which one was that?
Which one?
IRS.
Yeah, that's right. He's absolutely correct. The IRS Agents Union have endorsed Kamala Harris. Now
because they're getting more money.
Yeah, plus they're going to have more agents.
That's right, they're getting guns.
This has got to be like any person who, if I heard the ATO was endorsing a candidate, I don't care if it's even my candidate, I'll start voting for somebody else.
You pick it up and say, disendorse me.
Yeah.
Please disendorse me.
Yeah.
You're not helping. Oh, that's hilarious.
You know, I honestly, I don't. I've spent so much time in the United States. I've been to 26 of their states. I shouldn't say I spent so much time. I've spent enough time there, though. I've been to 26 of states. I've got family there. I've got friends there across the country. And I'm not hearing it. I'm not hearing the sort of support other than like a few people. Most of them are saying, and one of the really great things about the debate with Biden was that a lot of the Trump supporters or friends of mine said, hey, finally now we can actually have a reasonable conversation about Biden-Trump. Right? Where before they'd be shut down. You've even got celebrities now coming out in support of him. And who does she have? Taylor Swift comes out and gives that endorsement to her, right? And then they do a poll, and now Taylor Swift's numbers, she's less popular than Donald Trump is.
Well, her fan base turned on her.
Exactly.
She lost a few. I was surprised she lost a couple of big sponsors because it doesn't normally happen that way. Normally, it's the cancel culture's on the right.
I don't know.
She'll sign some ones up straight away.
I don't know why she did it.
Yeah, why would you take a big political position and you're singing to your customer base is a bunch of bloody 12-year-olds, which means that it's the parents. Look, when she was here in Sydney, and a friend of mine asked me for tickets, right? So I got the tickets. They were, front row tickets. $6,000 we paid for those tickets, okay? I don't think most people can afford those sorts of tickets.
No.
Those people that can, they probably don't want to pay a whole shitload of taxes and vote for Democrats. So the next time that kids ask, hey, can we go to a Taylor Swift concert? No.
Were those tickets next to Albo?
Or something like that. I didn't go. My friend wanted it. He paid for it, but I was the one that organised the tickets. But $6,000, like...
ridiculous amount of money.
It's nuts. Yeah. And you know what's nuts? Those and this is what I can't remember who. I think was it Tulsi Gabbard? No, it wasn't Tulsi Gabbard. It was that blonde woman used to work at Fox. She was the moderator in 2016.
Megyn Kelly.
Megyn Kelly.
Yeah.
She was on stage with Tucker Carlson recently.
Yeah.
And she said, what did she say?
So she said that the most offensive thing about that was that Taylor Swift's reason for endorsing Kamala Harris was the LGBTQ community, right? And things like what Walls has done in Minnesota. Now, I haven't fact-checked this, so I'm just going to base it on what she said.
Yeah, sure.
That Walls is actually going to use the Minnesota taxpayers' dollar to say that if you have a child who would like to go through some of this gender-affirming care bullshit term that they're trying to use, that Minnesota's rules say that they can terminate parental rights, right? And then your child can have all of this stuff done to them without any without your parents even knowing about it. So what he's done, according to what Megyn Kelly was saying,
that's right. I think he has actually done that. Yeah.
Yeah. So according to what Megyn Kelly was saying, is that you could be a child that lives in another state, and the Minnesota taxpayer would actually bring you over. The Minnesota judiciary will terminate your parental rights, and next thing you know, you get your kid back, and your kid's
So once he was selected as the VP, she was like, "Then I will endorse you."
This is what she's throwing her endorsement behind.
And it's a young girl. Like, you want to chop your whatever.
Well, and again, this is one of those issues that somebody has to explain to me. I accept that in a big population, there's going to be some people that don't conform, and they deserve all of the love and compassion and respect that they can get. Right? I totally believe that, but it's not 30% of Gen Zs. It just isn't. There's no way that could happen. The other thing is that, generally speaking, in the past, this was always something that was generally a male thing.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we have girls doing it. Why? And you see cluster groups where, a bunch of like 5 or 6 girls, all of a sudden,
The trend.
right?
Trend.
So is it exactly? Now, as soon as we say it's a trend, it's misinformation, you're against the LGBTQ community. I'm not against the LGBTQ community. You guys do what you want to do, but please just recognise that sometimes you've pushed things a bit too far, and maybe it's confusing for young people.
So, if you have a look at that, one of the things that is a trend in all this stuff that's coming out of the culture wars from the left is they're against women, right? They are totally against women, and and what that does is slow down the reproduction in the Western cultures, which means that we've got a declining population, means that they pretty much hate humans,
Especially white men. And they need immigration to bolster.
and they need immigration
numbers.
to bolster everything. But the problem is, and I had this said to me once. We were in the Middle East, and a cleric over there said to me, he said, "We will conquer the West, not through war, but through outbreeding you."
It's true. It's true. Yeah. What is it?
I think it's
4 kids,
4 or 5
for
to
one wife,
Yeah, for one wife,
and 4 wives.
and then 4 to 10 wives, and then what's I think we're 0.75 or 1.2 or something.
Well,
We're less than the
Australia's not that bad, but it's bad. It's 1.65 to 1.7.
7. Yeah,
It used
but
to be
that's
when I was in school, it was like 1.75. So
That's not worse than Korea.
Korea's
well,
bad.
Japan's terrible.
Japan,
as well.
they have
China from 2025 onwards, the one-child policy kills China.
Yeah,
Right, it kills their population.
Japan's
Well, and also
funny.
it meant that you had a very male.
Male, you got a lopsided.
Yeah.
Japan's funny because I think they have visas. They have visas for impregnating. Like they have repopulation visas. I
Japan
think.
has got a problem. I really like Japan. I think it's
got all
it's
weird
run
ones.
relatively well, but it does have some serious issues. And one of them is that you have to actually pay a tax when you inherit property. So therefore, a lot of these homes are just being left to rot because the next generation doesn't want to pay the taxes. There's all sorts of different
there's a whole-
demographic issues that they've got in Japan, but it's not insurmountable. I think Japan will get past.
Do you think that those are just the leftover things from imperialism?
Look, I think that there's just some challenges Japan's had with the crises that they've had financially and stuff like that. But look, just remember, if you go back and look at who the richest people were in the world 20, 30 years ago, they were Japanese, they weren't Americans. So I do think Japan will bounce back. I just think that they're perhaps at a crossroads between traditional culture and sort of some newer stuff. But Japan's a beautiful country. They're lovely people.
Yeah. And you're right. I can remember travelling around Japan and seeing all these, and a lot of them were small farms, smallholder stuff. And I'm like, well, why is it rotting? Why is it rotting? And then, we got in and talked about it. The other problem is the Japanese parliament is old white men. So they're still stuck,
But again, that's
in that it'll
changing.
It'll change.
Yeah.
But they had a very basically to become a politician in Japan. Culturally, it was always the older man.
But again, that's their cultural thing as well, because they sort of have this old sort of patriarchal system, but they also have like a reverence for older people and things like that. So it's a cultural thing. It'll change. I do actually have quite a lot of faith in Japan. I think that would be great. And unfortunately, the assassinated prime minister, the former prime minister, he was actually moving Japan in a direction that I thought was quite
Abe,
positive.
wasn't it?
Yeah,
Shinzo Abe.
Abenomics.
Abenomics.
They said it.
Abe should be, but
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry.
I was going to say, was it you and I that were talking the other day about Japan and how they decided not to go down the immigration path to solve their declining population? They've sort of gone down
that was a few months ago, I think, that I mentioned that to you. But they have actually allowed they do allow immigration for that purpose, but that hasn't been the primary thing that they want to do because they want to hold on to their culture.
Yeah, they've gone down more the like fiscal route or something. Yeah, I can't remember. Someone was saying.
As I said, they'll get past it. But to come back to the United States, look, you've got all of these issues facing the United States. I mean, can you imagine Kamala Harris? Can you imagine if you're in the military, right? And you've got to take orders from Kamala Harris. Can you imagine that? Imagine getting a phone call. Hey, I've decided. I can't even emulate her cackle.
What can be?
I've decided to activate the nuclear weapons. You'd be like,
and it'd be on Canada.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, because you forget that Canada's an ally.
They should attack Canada because last time they did, we got involved. That's the only time they lost. We burnt their bloody White House down, didn't we?
What can be unburdened by what has been.
We unburdened by the last 3.5 years. Yeah. The final word, I think, has to go to Taylor Swift. At least Taylor Swift is consistent. She always sings songs about the terrible men that she picks in her life, and now she's picking terrible women. Good work, Taylor. Good work.
Isn't her boyfriend...
Which one?
A huge Trump supporter.
Yeah, he is. Is he a footballer or something? Yeah, the current one.
Yeah. Pro footballer.
Yeah. Well, Lady Gaga's father has come out and supported Donald Trump as well. And you listen to his interview and you're like, you're quite reasonable. How did you end up with this daughter? But this is the thing. You have a look at the celebrities that are endorsing her, and it's just like, and if like Ben Stiller, like, white guys for Kamala Harris. Like,
okay. But if you have a look at a lot of them are tied up with like the guilds and that their actual livelihood depends on that part of the machine working.
Well, don't forget that the lobby group for media in Hollywood is substantially bigger and more funded than the lobby group for the politicians.
Politicians, yeah.
You want to know where real lobbying money is? It's in media. It's not in politics. Just in case you want a job as a lobbyist.
God no. I feel like we should order some food here so that we can just keep going. But we've been almost going 4 hours, guys. And I really enjoy. I feel like we could keep going. We only covered half the stories. There's a lot of stuff we didn't get to. Heston Russell's story was a shocking one. I won't go into. The ABC adding extra bullet shots in the video. I mean, they come up.
That's treason.
And by the way, they're protected. Yeah. They're protected from the misinformation bill because they're professionals.
So, how many people have been sacked at the ABC? Like that is an absolute disgrace.
They hired extras. As far as I'm concerned, I like ABC Country Radio, right, when I'm driving.
Yeah, they're all right.
They do a fantastic service. So the ABC should be cut in half, right? The inner city woke fucking idiots in Ultimo, right?
And Parramatta now.
Parramatta now.
Yeah, they've changed it.
They should be hived off and let die. Let ABC Country go, Macca of a Sunday morning and, Landline and all that sort of stuff because they provide a service. But holy shit, the rest of the ABC is crap.
I'm not even sure who the ABC's audience is because all these rich inner city people, these overprivileged, guilt-ridden people, they're not watching the ABC anyway because they've got their Netflix accounts, they've got Foxtel, they've got...
It's the other ABC employees.
Yeah.
It's honestly nuts, and they keep having these BS internal reviews where they bring in, this person, that person, to look at how can we fix this? And they're like, well, let's put an office in Parramatta, conservative Western Sydney. And it's like, well, now you're making Parramatta left wing because you're pouring all this extra money and you're still hiring the same idiots.
Isn't that now little India?
Yeah,
Parramatta. So you're going to put Bollywood.
This is Harris Park.
Harris Park.
Yeah. Harris Park.
Right next door. But no. On top of that, we've got a situation where their Q&A show, their sort of flagship show, which used to be a really good show. It was always left wing, and the audience was always left wing. But it was actually they had some pretty good panels, and there were some great debates. And I think the left genuinely won of quite a lot of those because I grew up on a lot of them. And now it's just completely gone left. They only have 100 to 150,000 views a week. I mean, our show.
Is that all they got?
Mate, this show does 1 million a week across all the clips. Their ones, unless they have a uniquely viral moment, which will be 5 seconds, it doesn't particularly do very well at all. And they keep changing it. They're like, well, maybe if we move it to Thursday or Tuesday, it'll work.
It's the same issue that they're not doing. It's like when I say the government acts like it's got a mandate they don't have. The ABC is producing content Australian people don't want.
100%.
You know, I would rather sit down and listen to somebody who doesn't agree with me, but it's a fair conversation where there's an exchange of ideas. That's what Q&A used to be. That's what a number of other shows used to be on the ABC. Now have a look at it.
It's nuts. And that's the thing. That's why I created the Ark. It's because it's a safe space for our people because we've got nowhere to go. You know, this is not a debate panel. Like, I will get people in that can do live debates and we can do it here and whatever. But the inevitable evolution of this show is a live audience, a fair group on the left, fair group on the right, arguing a topic, climate change or this or that. Having the discussion that Australia ought to have, that the ABC should be holding because they receive $1 billion of taxpayer funding. You guys are probably wondering, why are we talking about the ABC? It's because they receive $1 billion every year of taxpayer funding. It's your money.
Actually,
and they're not doing their job.
Now, isn't it?
It's a little over. Yeah, I think they get $1 billion, and then SBS, they might get another $1 billion or something like that. It's like, that's nuts.
The question for the ABC is Media Watch going to do a takedown of themselves this week?
On what particular?
On the
Heston Russell thing.
Actually, I think they did.
Oh, did they?
I think they did. I think there was an ABC show. I'm not sure if it was that one.
Did Paul Berry like just gloss over it and just quickly mention it because he has to, or did he actually spend some time? We'll have to look it up.
Scrolled across the bottom in the ticker.
It wasn't ABC Australia. It was ABC America. That we got our sources wrong. Yeah.
I think I do have to find. Media Watch here. ABC accused of audio no. Yeah, I think that might be it. I think that might be the one. I do believe, to their credit, it was so bad they had to call themselves out, but I'd have to double check this one. It's just ridiculous. Heston's a great guy. He's the guy that really helped spearhead the Royal Commission into veteran suicides, which was damning, to say the least, on what it came out with. But yeah, that's the one story we didn't get to. There's another, and I want to get Heston in the studio next time he's out of Queensland. But the other one was the Coles and Woolies have been pulled up for basically saying that they're dropping prices and whatever, but they've been very manipulative in the way they've been doing it, and they've both been doing it. And it's been disgusting now. Eye gouging people, it's not what's needed right now. And the government's using them as a scapegoat because they're screwing up in their own way with fuel and adding prices and inflation. But then you've also got these, big corporates as well being no better. So the government now is an excuse to pass the buck onto Coles and Woolies. And
look, Coles and Woolies are just going to do what Coles and Woolies do because they're major corporations and they're out from this. One of the things is I go back to what I say, we've got a dumb voter problem. We've got a dumb shopper problem as well, right? So it doesn't matter whatever happens in our society, we've got to look at us first, right? It's all well and good sitting there going, Coles and Woolies, the politics, look at yourself, right? If you don't like Coles and Woolies and you still shop there, you're a fucking idiot, right? It's as simple as that, right? I'll go out of my way to shop at an independent. Might cost me more, but I'm putting my money where my fucking mouth is, right? I hate Coles and Woolies. They are fucking over our farmers. It's as simple as that, right? The government's not helping. The government's fucking over our farmers as well, right? But to stop it, stop fucking shopping there. It's as simple as that. It's quite a simple fix, people.
Yeah. Go to John Paul, what's his name? Drake. John Paul Drake.
Go to Drake's.
Yeah,
go to IGA's.
He's in South Australia.
Go to a farmer's market.
100%.
You know what? You can buy directly from farmers and you're getting better quality, cheaper. And people that say, look, I can't go on a Saturday, that's fine, no problems. There's a lot of service, especially Sydney, Melbourne, where they deliver it to you.
All over the country.
Right? So, do that and get your veggies from one place and your meat from somewhere else, get your seafood somewhere else.
Especially meat.
But I will just say this about much higher quality meat. I mean, the butcher I go to in Camden, his meat's fantastic, but it's expensive. But if I went directly to the other place that's near there, which you go to the farmers, you get it directly, but I end up going to the butchers.
Oh, they deliver meat now.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
There's a heap that does. Now, Coles and Woolies, this whole thing about, we put our prices up, then we said that we discounted, okay, whatever, fine, right? I'm not supporting that, but whatever. It's Coles and Woolies. Here's the thing. They said they were going to have an inquiry to do something about cost of living and to do something about price gouging. Now, here's the thing about price gouging. What I said at the time was when people call for that, what do you want government to do? Because government's going to have to put a cap on how much profit the company can charge on these things. That's not a good idea. So what have they done? I knew that could not be done. There's no way that you could pass something like that. So what did they do? They've come up with this. They found this like, oh yeah, your prices went up. Now Coles and Woolies are just going to say, well, no. We didn't put the prices up and then discount it. What happened was the prices went up naturally over that period of time. And then, yes, we brought the prices back down and you know, essentially subsidised it.
That's what they did.
Yeah.
Right?
That's exactly what they did.
But they're online shopping, right? So you go online, you go onto the Coles and Woolies online shopping. Sometimes there is stuff all discounts on there because they keep it up. They keep the prices up online. And convenience. The one thing is, if a politician or a company tells you they're doing it for convenience for you or they're doing it for your safety, you've been fucked.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Oh, yeah, for your convenience.
For your convenience. You're the product. If something is free, you're the product.
Yeah.
If it's for your safety, you're the product.
Yeah. Well, just
if it's for your convenience, you're the product.
And if you've got to pay for it, you're still the fucking
and you're still getting fucked.
Yeah.
But this is the biggest thing that the consumer out there today needs to wake the fuck up and go, you know what? I've got to start putting my money where my mouth is. It's like you got to start putting your vote, and because your vote is money, right? The only thing that the corporations of the world, the only thing that politicians care about is staying in power and staying in control. You know, and we can break that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can break it.
Absolutely. One of the tools I want to make on this particular topic, I've mentioned a few times. I have the contacts to do it. I want to make a tool where I can reach out anonymously, these farmers, they can send to me, and obviously we've got to verify what they're getting, what they're selling to Coles and Woolies, the farm gate price.
Yeah.
And we can actually work out to what extent are they being eye gouged and what are they actually selling it on the store.
So, some of it is also the middlemen as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Right?
So the whole supply chain.
The whole supply chain needs to be looked at.
That's right.
Because there is middlemen that are taking advantage.
Exactly. And what I want to do is I want to simplify the complex, just like you've seen with the policy matrix, a free tool that shows you where the parties are at. You do that, because this is the thing. I don't like Coles and Woolies, but I'm also not anti-corporations. I want to know to what extent are they making a profit and to what extent is the government also at fault. So
but a lot of it is government regulation that's causing it.
Exactly. So and
things like so for instance, I was talking to a guy that used to run a small abattoir, right? And because I'm a big thing. I love regenerative farming and the clean food movement. I think we really need to get behind that. One of the things he was saying is that like he used to, it was small anyway. Maybe 10 cows, 10 head a day, and he was saying that the overburden on his abattoir, right, of regulation and red tape and all the crap. He basically just went, oh, it's not worth doing.
But the reason why that's happened again, you look at Western Australia, a lot of the meat products were prepared in individual stores. Then what did they do? They moved it all down to Bunbury or something.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what they're doing. Now, I understand that there's an economy of scale, and sure, there is going to be a big price difference between what the farmer gets and what the retailer sells it for because they're buying it in wholesale volume, especially Woolworths, Coles.
Well, it's the value add that you're talking about before.
Exactly. Plus, they have to account for how much of the food that they buy that they end up not being able to sell and waste. Having said that, the everything from the supply chain to what's happened with these big stores has distorted the market. You still have up in Queensland. You still have, when we had the great lettuce shortage.
Yes.
But they still had lettuces up in Queensland that couldn't be sold because of government regulations.
Couldn't go across the border.
Couldn't go across the border
because of COVID in a fucking lettuce.
Just because of this bloody, because of this thing in Western Australia, the old potato growers board that restricted the amount of stuff. Right. I mean, come on. And by the way, if you buy mushrooms from Woolworths in Western Australia, it comes from a woman's only mushroom farm, right? Because why?
Well, look at the sheep.
I have nothing against women, but
keep the sheep.
What's that about?
Oh, yeah.
You can't have a men's only. Like, what is that?
So there's guys here in New South Wales that have been buying sheep way under the price they can buy them local. They can buy them in WA, ship them over here, and still beat the price they can buy them locally because of the glut of sheep in WA.
Wow.
Because of the live, was it the live sheep exports? Yeah.
Probably something like that, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
So 20 years ago, I knew a bloke who used to buy some sort of fish product, and he used to ship it to Thailand to be prepared and then ship it back. It was still an Australian product, but it was just prepared over there.
Joel, do you remember the video I sent you about the meat in Iraq?
Yeah, I don't have
Australian meat.
Yeah, he was saying, he showed me that the Australian meat being sold in Iraq is cheaper there than it is here.
Oh, it's cheaper.
WTF.
I was in Dubai. One of the first times I went to Dubai, and you could go to like the big shops there, and they've got like beef and lamb, right? And it's got like different countries, right? So you start off on this side and it's shit, and then you get to the good stuff. So you got like, it starts off with like Pakistan and India, and then it like slowly moves through, all these different regions, and then the primo stuff, Australian and New Zealand. And so I see some lamb, and I'm like, hang on a minute. So I ring one of my mates in Perth. I'm like, wasn't lamb like $45 a kilo? He's like, yeah. How much is it there? 15.
WTF.
Yeah.
Right.
And the live, like a lot of these countries, Indonesia is a prime example. The reason, or one of the reasons that they like live export is they don't have fucking refrigeration. So us sending them mass pallets of produce, of cut and processed meat, it would rot because they can't distribute it. Right? And so they take live cattle, put them in feedlots, and then slaughter them, and they're pretty much used up within the 24-hour period.
What they're going to end up doing in this country is exactly what we've seen in the United States. You've got 5 major companies. It's the same with every industry. You've got 4 or 5 major players.
JBS Cargo.
And you're going to have 4 or 5 major companies that own all the farming in this country, because nobody else is going to be able to comply with the regulations or compete with the prices. That's what you're going to end up with.
And what we'll end up doing is we'll have a underground black market lettuce. Right. So you'll go and you'll sneak out, and you'll get your tomatoes, and you'll get your lettuce, and then a copper will pull you up. Fucking illegal lettuce, mate. 15 years in jail. Fucking off you go.
You'll have people come up to you and be like, "Do you want a plastic straw with that lettuce?
Fucking want a lettuce? Want a lettuce?
So I ordered a drink, doesn't matter, the other day, a paper straw, plastic cup.
Yeah.
WTF. Yeah, and you go to Coles and Woolies.
But it used to be a paper, that same place I got the drink from, it used to be a paper cup with a plastic straw. What the fuck? Like, who's in charge of this?
It makes me homicidal.
So I had this conversation with some kids of a good friend of mine, and they were saying, "Oh, mate, isn't it great? We've got plastic, we've got paper bags and boxes to bring our groceries home." I'm saying, that's what we used to do when I was a fucking kid. And they looked at me and went, "What?"
Yeah.
Like plastic was brought in because of government regulations. Like the health and safety of wrapping everything was a government regulation. So we've got a plastic problem because government brought laws in, unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was also about save the trees.
And it was about saving the tree. Yeah, saving the trees.
Isn't that funny? And now it's like save the trees, but by killing trees.
Well, so now we produce electricity from biomass, which is trees.
Not just any trees. They chopped down a 100-year-old forest in the United States because it's renewable.
But in Europe, they do it all over Europe. Like Sweden and all these places where they put up these big, pine or spruce or whatever it is in mass quantities. They've just clear-felled fucking forests left, right and centre.
And they're the same people that...
To produce biomass electricity. But you're a fucking idiot.
These are the same idiots, the same people that were telling us before about the deforestation of the Amazon.
What happened to save the trees?
Right?
Oh, where's Bob Brown? Where's Bob Brown? Save the fucking Franklin, right? And save the thing. You know, what is he? Probably a quadrillionaire or something, sitting there smoking his fucking ganja and going, "We've got to fucking climate change by fucking every forest so that we can get hold of." Right? It's like, it doesn't make any fucking sense.
Oh, don't get me started.
And I'm going to go off on this. So sorry.
Listen, why don't you
tell us what you really
at least
think.
said we can get a private jet, we can fly to one of these climate change.
Well, exactly.
Tell us what you really think, mate.
The other thing that came out the other day was fucking nuclear energy is fucking 15 billion times worse than fucking, solar panels and windmills. Fuck off. No fucking way. Right? A nuclear power station lasts 80 years. Right? A solar farm will last 15 to 20 if you're lucky. So you've got a 4 times capital cost. Like, I'm no fucking math scholar, but I can go 4 and 1. So I've got 4 times capital cost and 4 times fucking building and 4 times getting rid of the shit versus 1. Like, I'm no fucking math genius. But 4 to 1, holy fucking shit. We are governed by fucking clowns. And if I hear this idiot Bowen once again say that nuclear is the dearest form of energy, someone's going to shove a nuclear power station up his ass because it's fucking bullshit.
So hydropower is my personal preference on this stuff.
Coal's my personal preference.
Hang on, no.
Burn, baby, burn.
I'm going to go down any sort of renewable thing. Hydro, I think's great because a lot of Europe's on hydro.
No, nuclear. Dense form of energy with a dense form of energy.
The Australian government's hydro agency has identified and said, look, if we take these facilities, we can knock out the 100% of Australia's electricity grid. And why are they even talking about nuclear and solar farms at this point? But
we can't build a dam because there'll be a blue-footed fucking frog in some fucking valley that no one's ever fucking seen.
Well, that might have been one of those frogs that Alex Jones said turned gay. Because
or a mushroom that you fucking lick and get high off fucking something, So it's like, fucking let's go hug a fucking tree, fuck up the country, but we can't have the one thing that will solve everything because it's fucking dearer than the thing that's going to fuck up the country. Right? It's just...
You're talking too much sense, sir. You're going to be exported, to some country that makes
fucking
sense.
Send me to fucking Macquarie Island and put me in a little jail there. That's what we'll do. Actually, I think I've solved it, right? We'll go to ACMA, right? We'll start up jails on little islands in the Pacific, right? And we'll export all us criminals there so we can create new economies once they release us from jail. We ever heard that before? Oh, it's fucking Australia!
Which
Jesus!
You mentioned Port Arthur earlier.
Yeah.
Now, when you go down to Port Arthur and you go on that tour, there's a thing for the prison, and one of the wardens was a former prisoner. Right? I think we should go back to that. If someone's done a crime, let them do their crime, and then, move on, depending on what it is. But, if it's something that's going to get you sent over here, it's going to be minor. You stole some bread or something like that. So, we should all, they should buy us a Pacific Island, just send us
100%.
there. We'll run it. You just leave us alone.
Nauru. I'll go to Nauru.
I'll join you.
Right. Just give me some free land in Nauru.
I'll turn into Singapore, huh?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Give us 20 years. And
no, not even. Singapore. Not even. You give us any place.
Mate, I'll sell passports at 20 grand, 30 grand a pop. Right. You'll be able to register your company there. We'll have free zones there. Right. You'll be able to have your super yacht registered there. Mate, it'll be fucking awesome.
People there straight away. All you need to have a really successful place, right, is it helps if you have a port.
Yep.
That's about it, actually.
Yeah.
It helps if you've got a port. Hong Kong, Singapore. What was Hong Kong? Go to Hong Kong 50 years ago. There's nothing there. It's rocky.
Singapore was a swamp.
Singapore, same thing, right?
Jakarta was a swamp. Hey, mate, that's what we're going to find. We're going to find a swamp in the middle of the Pacific and turn it into the greatest city-state ever. Yep. Because all the good city-states around the world were fucking swamps that they turned into ports.
I elect me as king because I'm a Republican.
The chat.
If I'm the king, nobody else
you can be king. Right. I want to be treasurer.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine. And if you want to do anything, meet me at the yacht club and make sure you bring a brown paper bag with a certain denomination in it and, I'll sign off what you want.
We're going to have one law. That's it. Just one law, right? Don't be a fuckwit. That's it. As long as you're not interfering with anybody else, you're good to go.
Right, Rami, what's the chat saying?
So everybody in the chat wants Steve to be a PM.
Independent Republic of Stephen Petith.
Exactly.
I was going to say, guys, we talk about this stuff, but I don't think they're joking, these two. I think they could actually get it done. I'm not even joking.
I'm not joking.
No, Stephen knows.
No.
Stephen knows I'm not joking because I was thinking about buying a particular island this years ago, and I said to him, what do I need to do? And we went all through it with the United Nations and blah, blah, blah. I said, what do I need to do to have my own country?
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you fucking what, nobody could run a country worse than the politicians of Western countries right now.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
And when I say that, I mean, I'm not saying they're not joking as if they don't mean what they say. They definitely mean what they say. I mean, in terms of could they pull it off and do it? I mean, they could do it. That's who we got here. Go Google them. They're good people. Don't Google him. Google Stephen Petith because he's the one that's the Prime Minister. He's the front guy. But great guys, really phenomenal. And I've got to wrap this up because otherwise I'm going to collapse from my sugar levels.
It's only 4 hours.
It's only 4. Look, I need to build up my tolerance for election night because that's going to be 2 months. So it's going to be the longest stream ever, which we can do, by the way, with this setup, thanks to you guys donating. But guys, thank you so much for your wisdom economically with regards to teaching me some new words and because I don't know these words, guys. You wouldn't know that. I've never said them on camera before. So Stephen, thank you for coming in. You're always welcome anytime. I suspect we could have gone for another 5 hours. And Shakeel, as always, thank you again. Second time.
I'm a bit more lively this time.
No,
that's what's very serious.
No, it was good though. That was.
I bring it out in you.
You were cackling harder than Kamala. And if you guys want to support, go to this link here. It's screenshot the QR code. Shoot us a few bucks. Help us get the word out. It's doing very well. 1 million views a week. We're smashing it compared to Q&A. And if you haven't already, add your name to the petition for the tpaust.com.au petition against the misinformation bill. Submissions close Monday. The bill won't be introduced until it won't be voted on probably till late November, but it could be heavily used to censor anything with regards to the vote count happening in the election quarter in the US presidential election. But gentlemen, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, God bless you. I'll see you later for a show next week. Take it easy.